Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. I was not expecting to stream today about anything super specific, to be quite honest, because we've had all these weeks now of Apple announcements. Well, to be honest, it was 1 week with 3 days of announcements, but then we had reviews for all of it. We had even some drama. We still have a little bit of unresolved stuff between like the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. We're going to get to some of that today. I promise you. I already see Riley in the chat saying if Subway gameplay is not in the video, we are not watching. Well, Riley, to make you happy, just for a few seconds, I actually downloaded Subway Surfer City, but it's asked to control on the Mac because you need the mouse. It is the iPad app, so it's touchscreen optimized. But my mouse seems to be relatively fast enough for all of it. And there doesn't seem to be an actual macOS port, just where you control it with like your arrow keys or whatever. And now I died. I hope you're happy, because I definitely am happy today, ladies and gentlemen. Boom, greatest intro of all time. We have actual new surprise hardware to discuss from Apple, something I definitely didn't expect today, which is Apple out of the blue, without any leaks or rumors leading up to that, not even from Mark Gurman, who just yesterday, as you saw next to my Subway Surfer gameplay, who just yesterday released a Power On newsletter, his usual like Sunday reports on everything old and new in the world of Apple, right? We often react to that stuff. The recent Power On newsletter wasn't actually super duper like filled out, so I actually didn't bother to react yesterday, and I think that's for the best because we now have a lot more to react to today. Astuce also saying hi. Riley calling this an immersive stream. Really glad I was able to help you out with your Subway Surfer co-streaming addiction. As always, guys, let me know what the audio and video quality is like for you. My eyes are super tired after work and everything, so I might not have done everything correctly while quickly setting this up. And as always, do the YouTube jazz before we get fully into this. Subscribe to the channel, share the video out with anybody you think might enjoy it. Like the video, it helps tremendously attract new people. We've been able to grow here on the Discord, on my Twitter account. Of course, comment. I love interacting with a lively comment section, getting your suggestions, your opinions, and beyond all that, you can become a much more direct supporter of this channel. Whenever you catch me live, consider leaving a super chat or a super sticker to support me directly financially. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube or support you over on Patreon. Shout out to our MarkCheck Pro members, KSB Wonders and Denise, and our MarkCheck Pro Max members, Angelica, Steve, Max, Maximus, and Jonathan. And of course, just watching helps, so I welcome you to the community. Join the Discord, join Twitter. You'll find the links for both of them in the description. That way you can engage with us even outside of my YouTube streams. We have some really cool people, very well informed. We have Rosa joining the chat. Hello to everyone. It means so much to me that you're finding my streams live, finding them as VODs. It really, really helps the channel. But with all of that in and out of the way, let's get to the actual hardware announcement that, as I said before, came pretty much out of nowhere, which is Apple introduces AirPods Max 2. Interestingly, Apple seems to still be sticking with their 2, 3, 4 branding as they have on AirPods and AirPods Pro. So you know that obviously Apple does not call every device based on like which model it is in the lineup. The iPhone and the AirPods are kind of the last examples of that. iPads have gone to branding based on years, and then later based on the chip inside. Macs obviously as well. We obviously have also differentiation between like Airs and Pros and Minis, and on the iPhone we have the E series now. But like actual numbers of like, oh, this is Gen 1, this is Gen 2, right? The Apple Watch uses that, but it's different still, right? Because it's series, right? Apple describes the entire family with that, right? Though I guess Apple Watch Ultra, right? Apple Watch Ultra, I think, is distinctly called just like Apple Watch Ultra 3 or 4, right? Yeah. Okay, so correct. So the Apple Watch Ultra still has that, while the regular Apple Watch is series, and then there's the SE3. Okay, so it is. Apple definitely seems to prefer that branding for like their smaller kind of accessory like products. Obviously, the iPhone has seen its first major deviation from that recently with the introduction of the iPhone Air, not calling it the iPhone 17 Air. There's also rumors that the iPhone Fold or iPhone Ultra would follow a similar naming scheme and not introduce 18 or 19 into its name. So that's just one thing that really caught my eye. Apple did already upgrade AirPods Max, but they did not call them AirPods Max 2 or second generation. We got basically AirPods Max Lightning with the very, very first AirPods, and then AirPods Max USB-C, right? They still shared the same H1 chip and stuff like that. So now that we actually have a real new generation, now not a redesign, I know that's what many people wanted. That's not what you're getting. If for some reason these were uncomfortable for you, whether they're too big or too heavy, or any other reason, or you don't like how the cushioning sits on your ears for the AirPods Max, AirPods Max 2 do not fix any of that. AirPods Max 2 are primarily coming along to give you the power of the H2 chip. Now, the H2 chip is actually quite old at this point. It was introduced with AirPods Pro 2, and then, contrary to our expectations, AirPods Pro 3 basically just reused it. Somehow Apple still managed to give it noticeably better battery life, so I'm not complaining. I'm very happy with my AirPods Pro 3 myself. And I actually expected, and this is something that I believe I had speculated either on the Discord or on Twitter, which is my speculation was that Apple was going to wait with a full new generation AirPods Max until they had the H3 chip, and then the H3 chip would power AirPods Ultra or AirPods Pro 3.5, whatever they're actually going to be called. It's that model with air gestures and stuff like that that's supposedly coming later in the year. And so I thought that the H3 chip would be for basically AirPods Max 2 or AirPods Ultra. I definitely did not expect for Apple to have a spontaneous upgrade for AirPods Max in the spring, even though for over a year it has been kind of like rumored that Apple might drop a new generation, but then it actually went really silent. So I was not the only one surprised. Go to Twitter, see what all the tech YouTubers have to say, all the people who cover this as their livelihood. Everyone was shocked. Jamie7566, well, this is a surprise. I really didn't expect these. See, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Powered by H2, AirPods Max are better than ever with more effective active noise cancellation, enhanced sound quality, and new features like adaptive audio and live translation. So because the previous generation did not have an H2 chip like AirPods Pro 2 did, right? AirPods Pro 2 did get basically all the features of AirPods Pro 3 minus the things that are actually based in better hardware like superior ANC, or to be more precise, actually the things that AirPods Pro 3 get way better than AirPods Pro 2 is passive noise cancellation. So they actually use a different stem that much better isolates noise. The actual active part of noise cancellation, which is creating an anti-noise that's designed to counter what noise is coming from the outside, that's not that much better. It's literally the physical design of AirPods Pro 3 that changed. With AirPods Max 2, the physical design did not change, but we finally have a processor that we've had around for like 4 years, but it is here. Jamie saying they look like a great generational bump, but they don't plan on upgrading from my Lightning Pro Max. Too expensive to upgrade. I actually fully understand that. Specifically, if battery life is good enough for you, right? Then what is really the point? You probably have a Lightning cable that works perfectly fine, right? You plug them in at night, you charge, you have more than enough battery life for a day, probably 2, even 3 or 4, depending on your usage, right? And then you just charge them again, or maybe you keep them charged every night and you set them like to 80-90% charging or whatever, right? This is why I always say, don't feel forced to upgrade. Feel enticed to upgrade. Be happy to upgrade if you actually feel like you're getting something really worthwhile. I don't think that, like, we'll get to some of the specifics, but like 50% better active noise cancellation, given how good the ANC already was on AirPods Pro 1 with the H1 chip, whether it's the Lightning or the USB-C version, like, I don't think you will be forced by this, right? Suddenly, you go to the shop, you listen to these ones, right, and suddenly your own sound horrible to you. That's not going to happen. Apple does not even advertise them this kind of way. But if you are new, if you are somebody who were looking at like the Sonys, the Bose, right, all these kinds of like premium $400 to $600 premium over-ear headphones. That's something that will now make you much more likely to consider AirPods Max. While previously, most people would just say, just buy the latest Sonys, whatever, right? They have pretty similar, even better ANC, not as good transparency mode, but they might have either better sound quality or they're just better quality of life because they can actually fold. They're more lightweight because they're built out of plastic. They're more often discounted. So even if their MSRP is actually very similar to AirPods Max, at least you can get them for like $400, and it's the new model. It's not like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, whatever AirPods Max version. So this is what these AirPods are for. It's not for people like you who already have a really great pair of AirPods. So alongside better ANC, Apple also promises elevated sound quality and intelligent features, or this is something that basically has been introduced throughout the H2 AirPods Pro 2 lifespan, and then later even more was added when AirPods Pro 3 came out. They're all based on the same chip. That's also, by the way, something that could be worthwhile waiting for. This is a chip that's still based on Bluetooth 5.3. If you believe in the future that Bluetooth 6 or maybe even some kind of integrated Wi-Fi capabilities could really transform the way you use AirPods, and you already have a really good pair that will last you until that release, then do that, right? This channel is not about frivolously spending money, overspending, and stuff like that. Just buy what you think will really give you joy, and if your finances really allow it. Apple today announced AirPods Max 2, bringing even better ANC, elevated sound quality, and intelligence features to their iconic over-ear design. It is actually iconic. It's not iconic because it's like suddenly the most popular headphones ever. Even though I would actually argue that AirPods Max are probably the over-ear headphones that I see the most of here in Berlin. It used to be like the Sonys, right? But it's not like many people have even over-ear headphones outside. Most people I see use earbuds. Most of them are AirPods Pro, actually. And I mean, AirPods Pro have like an MSRP of $250. You can very often buy them at $200 or less. So This is iconic. I would actually argue yes, but that iconic stuff also comes with some criticism, right? Like that bra case that comes alongside them, or the fact that they're relatively heavy, or the fact that they don't actually fold up like the plastic alternatives, right? To make them much more compact, or the fact that it doesn't have an off button, which I've seen many content creators complain about, right? Even though the earbuds AirPods also don't have an off button. So Apple is trying to kind of unify that experience. So iconic, yes. Does iconic in this case mean only positive and super highly regarded universally? I would argue no. Powered by H2, features like adaptive audio, conversation awareness, voice isolation, and live translation come to AirPods Max for the first time. As to why people want off button, I think that the only reason why I think it's somewhat justified on big AirPods like these is that you actually don't use them as much as your smaller AirPods, right? Which you will just have in your pocket. You pull them out, you put maybe one in. That's how I use them, right? And then you just go throughout your day, hey, maybe even at work. Over-ear headphones are a much more deliberate process, I would argue. You probably are putting them on to actually escape some noise in the on the airplane or in the car. Well, preferably not while you are driving, but you know what I mean, right? And so people are afraid that during the standby, they will drain out of battery. So they think that turning them off and potentially waiting a few seconds while they reconnect is a worthwhile compromise to the seamless experience of AirPods and AirPods Pro, because at that point, you will just have the full battery life the second you turn them on. That's my steelman argument for it. That's the strongest argument I can make. Like with that bra case again, like there is an argument that Apple themselves understand that people want maybe a more intense low power mode for them, which I could see them also implementing just in software. I don't really understand why they need a separate case for it. I think it would be basically smarter to just ship these without a case and just have people buy like a standalone case from whatever brand. Or Apple sells one separately like they do for Apple Vision Pro. And then people still get to like manually enable like low power mode if they choose to. When you put your AirPods in the smart case, they're kind of off. No, well, they're charging, right? Like, but they stay like my case is still connected. So it's a little bit of a philosophical discussion, right? It's like a little bit when you're talking about the human body, right? We have different organs, but we ourselves are an organism that combines all those organs into one final function, which is our life, right? AirPods and AirPods Pro, they consist of the case and the two buds. And even if the buds themselves might not be doing much, you expect them to be in the case, you expect them to be charging, which for that you would expect them to be on. The case you would expect to be connected in a way through like low power Bluetooth to your phone. Basically, the second you open it, it's not like turning it on, right? It's basically instant connection. You don't want to wait a couple of seconds before it reconnects. Oh, you mean when you put the AirPods Max in the smart case, it's not fully off. It's a super low power mode, which is, this was always weird to me. I don't like the case. I think the case is the worst thing that Apple does in regards to AirPods Max. I think they should cut the case from the shipping and reduce the price to just around $499. The people who are buying $500 over-ear headphones, they will also be able to afford a separate case if Apple wants to make one themselves. And I mean like a case that actually closes up, not like a body case, right? Like you're putting leggings on your freaking headphones. So it's basically a mid-step between regular standby and fully off. It's not something that Apple actually does on any other product in that regard. So we have all the intelligence features. They're coming to AirPods Max for the first time. Apple has to mention that because obviously these features already exist on AirPods and AirPods Pro. The new AirPods Max also unlock creative possibilities for podcasters, musicians, and content creators with useful features like studio quality audio recording and camera remote. AirPods Max will be available to order starting March 25th. So that's next Wednesday. So this Wednesday is the 18th, and you can order them the Wednesday after. And then availability begins early next month. So probably exactly a week later, maybe 2 weeks. It's a little bit weird for Apple to just say early next month and not actually a concrete date. That also, by the way, means that iOS 26.4 is guaranteed to come out in the meantime, right? So because these will require iOS 26.4 to connect to your phone and to work with all the new features. So keep that in mind. We basically got an indirect confirmation from Apple that in the next 2 weeks, at most like 3 weeks, we are getting iOS 26.4, macOS 26.4, all that stuff for compatibility with AirPods Pro. With the incredible performance of H2, AirPods Max are upgraded with up to 1.5 times more effective ANC for the ultimate all-day listening experience. So recent like high-end Sony's, what is it, XM6? The branding is so stupid. I always forget it after a while. Like according to MKBHD and the likes, those actually now do surpass AirPods Max in terms of active noise cancellation quality. Will 50% more be enough to not just match these kinds of superior headphones, but actually go beyond? Just purely based on like a broad hunch, given the way I hear people describe these better headphones, I would argue it's probably gonna actually be enough to be better again. But don't forget, these other headphones, they do get upgraded every year, and you do get like significant discounts on older generations and even new generations just after a few months after they are on the market. So while maybe in a way they will become inferior to AirPods Max again, they will probably represent better value by just being much cheaper. This comes from Eric Tresky, Apple's Director of Audio Product Marketing. The sound quality is remarkably clean, rich, and acoustically detailed, and when combined with capabilities like personalized spatial audio, AirPods Max deliver a profoundly immersive experience. Just like my stream is super immersive. You can get my responses, you can see me playing Subway Surfer. What else could the heart ever desire in life, right? So, active noise cancellation. Thanks to H2 and new computational audio algorithms, AirPods Max 2 deliver ANC that's up to 1.5 times more effective than the previous generation. If you compare that, for example, versus the original AirPods Pro, Apple said they doubled ANC from the H1 version to the H2 version, but then AirPods Pro 3 supposedly doubled that again, despite having the same chip, but by using basically different hardware. This is H1 to H2, so one might suspect that it should be 2x, but don't forget, a huge part of ANC is just the physical seal. And that physical seal over your ears has always worked way better, of course, with an actual pair of over-ear headphones like AirPods Max than it did with earbuds like AirPods and AirPods Pro. So there is less room here to improve ANC at the same pace as AirPods Pro. I would suspect that 1.5 times more here is now superior to AirPods Pro 3, which actually I would argue were the first AirPods Pros to be superior to the original AirPods Max. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what reviewers have to say. And then I will be there to react to that with you. This reduces even more noise like airplane engines or commuter trains, so users can fully immerse themselves in music, work, or phone calls. With a new digital signal processing algorithm optimized for H2, so Apple basically takes not just, of course, the hardware that has been powering AirPods Pro 2, AirPods Pro 3, AirPods 4, but also, of course, the software, the algorithms, the AI, if you want, from those devices and those chips. Makes perfect sense. Probably a little bit re-optimized for like an over-ear pair, but expect similar results. And the microphone on AirPods Max. So this is not just improving uh, ANC here, but it's also improving the microphones. Transparency sounds even more natural, so users can stay aware of their environment and those around them. I would argue that sound quality on all AirPods is good enough. I would argue ANC can be surprisingly great and up there with some of the best. But the one thing where I believe Apple positively excels is transparency mode. Now, that's beyond all the smart features and ecosystem integrations. These are things that I believe are essential to make AirPods AirPods and to make them like Apple AirPods, right? But transparency mode, in my opinion, is the true magic of AirPods and why I love using them, why I basically always have a pair of one AirPod in one ear. I have it in noise cancellation whenever I want to block noise out, usually to the side that's facing the street while I'm walking alongside the street. And then whenever I need something to hear, whether it's because I'm crossing the street and that's for safety, or somebody approaches me and talks to me, transparency mode kicks in, sounds absolutely natural. Now, it probably won't be quite the same with like an over-ear pair that has a lot more passive noise cancellation versus AirPods and AirPods Pro, but even on AirPods Max, the few times that I tried them, transparency mode has already been great, making it even better. Sounds, pun intended, quite amazing. Jamie, I have the Pros 3, so do I, and Pro Max and for ANC. It's very hard to say which one is better at ANC. That's exactly what I hear. I've never actually had the chance to compare my AirPods Pro 3 with AirPods Max 1, but that's what I hear from people that either have both or actually, of course, have been able to review both. I bet the Pro Max 2s are much better than the Pro 3s. Yes, I think that it's not Pro Max, actually. And this is one thing that is very interesting. This is one of Apple's few products that is just Max, right? The iPhone is Pro and Pro Max. The chips are kind of mirroring this branding where we have Apple M5 Pro and Apple M5 Max. But on AirPods, we never actually got AirPods Pro Max, right? We only have AirPods, well, regular AirPods with nothing else in the name. I guess AirPods 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have AirPods Pro 1, 2, 3, and then you have AirPods Max, and now we're kind of rumored to be getting an AirPods Pro 3.5 that might actually be labeled AirPods Ultra. So it will be quite a confusing lineup in terms of naming by the end. My speculation is still that Apple will come up with some other name for that improved pair of AirPods Pro 3, but we'll have to see. Yeah, but thank you, Jamie. It's so great to hear your own insight. I don't remember seeing you much in the chat. I really hope you're subscribed. I really hope you might consider joining our Discord. It's so great to hear from people with like real experience with the hardware. And actually trying to evaluate it rather than just giving like very broad statements. Like sometimes even reviewers like MKBHD, I feel like they don't really commit to like a certain outcome in their videos. They will just say, oh, it depends, or yeah, it could go either way, right? So thank you, Jamie, for being here. As to saying, so if we go to the web archive and check the AirPods page, the AirPods Max have 2 times better ANC than AirPods Pro 1. So AirPods Max would be like 1.5 times better than AirPods Pro 2. But that would put them a little bit behind AirPods Pro 3, right? At least according to Apple. But honestly, I think these numbers, they're super difficult to compare between the big models and like AirPods Pro. Just like and it will also feel different to some people. Like with earbuds, it's very depending how well they can sit in your ear, while obviously there's much less room for error in applying them if you're using like a pair of over-ear headphones like AirPods Max. So yeah, Apple will make sometimes statements like this. Like one thing that I remember even with like the A18 generation is like Apple was promising like 2 times faster ray tracing versus the A17 and M3 generation of RT hardware. And while that might be correct in certain scenarios and certain benchmarks, over time, more benchmarks, more real world testing, the way that things are actually optimized in the real world, they do tend to paint a slightly different picture. Yes, what I think is that AirPods Max 2 are 3 times better than Pro 1s, and Pro 3s are 4 times better than Pros 1. Yes, that would be the exact math that Apple provided, but I wouldn't be surprised if in actual real world, for most people, AirPods Max 2 delivered better ANC than AirPods Pro 3. Riley saying, I wonder why the sudden release. Well, my question is, I wonder why we didn't get it earlier, right? Because this is the same chip and all the same software features that Apple introduced with AirPods Pro 3. And to be honest, that chip is the same as on AirPods Pro 2. So Apple could have just slipped that chip in there, even when they did the original USB-C version, right? So better late than never, I guess. It feels sudden, but ultimately, when you think about it, it should have been out for at least half a year and probably a few years. Highest fidelity listening experience. They feature a new high dynamic range amplifier for even cleaner audio, while maintaining the incredible sound signature of AirPods Max. So it seems like Apple is not going head over heels here now with like giving you full control over the audio like other headphones do. They do try to focus on a default experience, but at least it's improved. Spatial audio content sounds better than ever, with improved localization of instruments, more accurate and consistent bass response, and more natural sounding mids and highs. For the highest quality audio across music, movies, and games, the new AirPods Max support 24-bit, 48 kilohertz lossless audio when connected with the included USB-C cable, which should be a little short probably for some people working, but it's better than not having it. Lossless audio and ultra-low latency audio enable music creators to fully utilize AirPods Max throughout their entire professional workflow and Logic Pro and other music creation apps. Obviously, you can use it with Final Cut. You can use it with games as well. You'll still benefit. But Apple is trying to pander here to their Logic users. Using the USB-C cable, AirPods Max are the only headphones that let musicians both create and mix and personalize spatial audio with head tracking. So I've never been a fan, as much as I really like to suck Apple off for their intelligence features with AirPods Pro 2 and 3. Head tracking has always been pretty disappointing to me. So but yeah, while spatial audio itself, I can actually find some value in, especially with really high quality audio, especially if it has been mastered for personalized spatial audio. But head tracking has always been a little bit hit and miss for me, to the point that I just never turn it on. You can let me know how it's for you with head tracking. I have basically everything turned on in terms of like intelligence features, obviously varying on the situation, but head tracking is something I never really turn on. Jamie saying, I love head tracking for watching movies on Apple TV. Yeah, to me, I guess because I have my big HomePod, my HomePod Biggie, as I call him, the original HomePod, which I still regret till this day that I didn't buy a stereo pair. You can ask some people in the Discord and my Twitter. You'll know that, oh, Jamie, I see you actually joined the Discord. That's great. Thank you so much. I really am waiting for HomePod 3, I guess, because I cannot force myself to buy the current generation HomePod because it's still based on Wi-Fi 4. I at least would like Wi-Fi 6, preferably something like Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7 in my HomePod, and I'm definitely not downgrading from my original HomePod with Wi-Fi 5. So I would actually be doing a downgrade in some way. So, but yeah, I'm so happy basically with my HomePod that I never use my AirPods with my TV. But the few times I tried, I found that that's something that actually works. It's not transformative for me, and it still can be hit and miss depending on what kind of like content you're watching. If you're watching a really expensively produced 7.1 surround sound, Dolby audio, whatever, right, Hollywood movie, it's gonna work better than if you're watching like an old TV show that was barely stereo or something like that. Reduced wireless audio latency also makes gaming even better. For this is also a feature that, for example, works. For Apple Vision Pro, right? That's something that Apple specifically advertised with AirPods Pro at some point. And pairing them with Apple Vision Pro. But obviously, it gives you also lower latency in game mode with iPhones, iPads, Macs, I believe Apple TV as well. Interesting that it's missing here. I think Apple TV has a gaming mode. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, game mode is, by the way, something that I've really grown to like. It does not do a huge difference, but I can definitely feel that prior to game mode, sometimes launching a game, like the game will be a little bit stuttery, a little bit slow before it basically recognizes, ooh, I'm the center of attention, right? With game mode, because game mode starts just alongside the game itself, the game instantly launches into full performance and everything works as intended. So yeah, having that now in AirPods Max 2 without having to resort to a USB-C connection is pretty great. Jamie saying, I will check for you now. Well, now I'm interested. What do you mean? Like Apple? Oh, you mean if Apple TV has game mode? Oh, that's amazing, Jamie. Super engaged audience today. Really means a lot to me. But let's actually get through the intelligence features because that has been basically the backbone of Apple's H2 chip, right? No game mode in Apple TV. So I guess I kind of like that. That's probably the effect of just me never playing games on my Apple TV. I just kind of assumed. So that's, I guess, something that Apple could introduce. Well, I mean, it's a software feature. It's not like they couldn't introduce it for the current version. But I guess with newer games, maybe something like Cyberpunk being ported to Apple TV. I mean, it works on the Switch too, right? Maybe if we get an A17 Pro or a base A18 chip based Apple TV, that could be a candidate for game mode. But yeah, thank you so much. Guys, I don't want to be super annoying about that, but because I have a plenty amount of you here right now, I just wanted to give a shout out to the YouTube stuff here. If you weren't there while I was giving a shout out early on, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment. You guys see, I love interacting with a lively comment section. You guys can give me more info, correct me if I'm wrong, right, and stuff like that. Of course, you can. Of course, you can just ask me questions if there's something you would like to know, right? So that's amazing. That helps with the algorithm. That helps with everything here. But also beyond all that, you can support me directly. You can send me a super chat or super sticker. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube. Support you over on Patreon. It all helps keep the channel going. I see my super chat goal won't activate. I guess the YouTube app is... Man, the YouTube app has become such shit over the last couple of years. Yeah, Stu, I agree. Maybe with the next Apple TV. Man, the YouTube app is so like it's nowhere near as bad as something like Discord or Twitter, but like man, the quality control levels on so much like and Apple is not perfect, don't get me wrong. Obviously, iOS 26 launched with plenty of issues and stuff like that. But in comparison to what Google, Microsoft, Facebook are delivering, I talked to a friend who has WhatsApp installed on Windows, and she only like recently understood, she didn't use it for a while, that there was like an upgrade that basically downgraded you from a native version to a web version. And she's like, my chats load in like 10 times the time that it took before. Sometimes images and stuff like that won't transfer from my phone at all, right? What is happening? And I'm like, sorry, that's the web app for you. And I talked to another friend who was giving me horror stories about Teams. And what do I see when I check the website? Oh, Teams is a half web-based app. It's partially native to just integrate it with all Windows features, but it's mostly just a web view thing. And yeah, so Apple gets rightfully some flack for getting some stuff wrong and needing more time to like refine liquid glass. But I find Apple's issues are just so much smaller than that of other big tech companies that I almost don't want to put it into the same conversation, because I feel like that does a disservice to the much higher quality output, at least on average, that Apple has. So, high dynamic range amplifier for even cleaner audio, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that. Let's go to the intelligent features. Adaptive audio, adjust the levels of ANC and transparency in response to the environment automatically to optimize the audio experience. That's also something that I don't use a lot on my AirPods Pro, partially because it's just so quick to switch between transparency and noise cancellation. But I do understand if you're somebody who never wants to really like fumble around with your AirPods, or maybe your hands are full. So in adaptive mode, they will do the work for you. They will block out the noise. If it's super loud and really noisy around you, if somebody approaches you and starts to talk to you, they will switch to transparency mode. That way you will actually understand what the person is saying. That's partially also conversation awareness. Helps lower content volume and reduce background noise when a user starts speaking to someone nearby. I wonder how many of these features also are like the result of like working on Apple Vision Pro, right? Because Apple Vision Pro has like also like conversation awareness features, right? Where like they will see your eyes with eyesight, suddenly look at them and things like that. Apple basically really wants to make their technology very social. That's partially why they still keep insisting on like integrating features like eyesight into Apple Vision Pro. But obviously something like conversation awareness is much cheaper to implement than having like stereoscopic OLED screens at the front of your virtual reality headset. And it's probably also going to work much better. Live translation powered by Apple Intelligence helps users communicate across languages in person. Thankfully, that's also now available in Europe. Has been for a while restricted because of our more strict AI laws. Voice isolation uses advanced computational audio powered by H2 to prioritize the voice during calls while blocking out ambient noise. And then I think this is actually more interesting just for general usage. With camera remote, users can capture content at a distance by pressing the digital crown to take a photo and start or stop video recording while using the camera app or compatible third-party apps on iPhone or iPad. This is a feature, again, that has come to AirPods Pro already, but I assume that this is going to be a big hit with like content creators and people like that. Studio quality audio recording. I've seen some people actually be somewhat apprehensive about like audio quality, like your own recording, right? Because Apple did not advertise it too much as like a hardware features, but like more as like an intelligence feature. But apparently studio quality audio recording allows interviewers, podcasters, singers, and other creators to record their content with higher quality audio and more natural vocal texture. Yeah, Astius, I agree. I also don't know why camera remote needs the H2. Maybe there's some security shit based into this, but even then, it's like because like taking control of your camera is something that can be abused. But that's a steal, man. I'm not defending Apple here. Very clearly, there is some software blocking, like some gatekeeping for newer hardware to make it more enticing. I'm not particularly angry here at camera remote because it's not going to drastically influence my purchasing decision, but it's still not the best behavior from Apple in that regard. Yeah, I do agree here. Loud sound recognition helps users prevent exposure to loud environmental noise while preserving the sound signature of what they're listening to. Stuff like this, I do understand why it will be more subject to newer devices. Not because, like, you do have the microphones and, of course, the ability to listen to the outside with older devices with older chips, but you would want a newer chip that's more efficient, that's going to consume much less energy while analyzing all that stuff. Is it, again, a feature that could easily work on H1, at least in a slightly reduced fashion? Yes. So, yeah, definitely a little bit of gatekeeping over there. Personalized volume automatically fine-tunes the listening experience for users based on their preferences over time. This is something that would actually require H2 because it does require it for basically creating like training data. But it's also a feature I don't really recommend. You don't really want to be listening to something on your headphones and suddenly your headphones become drastically louder or drastically more quiet. I just think that's not going to be a very good user experience. Siri Interactions allows users to conveniently and privately respond to Siri announcements by simply nodding their head yes or gently shaking their head no. This is something that's going to be based on very lightweight, like gyroscopic controls. This is also something that, again, depending on if you even have that kind of hardware inside H1, it could still work, but something that H2 can check much more often with higher efficiency on a better algorithm. So here, again, it's more understandable why there is some gatekeeping, but it's not perfect. We'll get to like the actual feature comparison website right now and see if there is any of that still works with H1, because Apple just basically listed all features. Basically, now the most important stuff about it is it's still $549. Again, I disagree. I think this should be $499, or hell, make them even better and then make them like $599 and make them actually compete with like $800 headphones for all I care. They exist in this slightly weird no man's ground in that regard, but they are helped by the fact that ever since the introduction of AirPods Max 1, a lot of other headphones have creeped up in price a lot, mainly the Sony flagship. So at least they're launching now at a price that once you consider inflation and the pricing of competition, doesn't sound as bad as it did for the original AirPods Max. But obviously it still sucks in comparison to like the $250 for AirPods Pro 3, which you shouldn't forget you can already get for like $210 or even like around $200 online. Apple also like commits to a stronger environmental goals here. That makes sense, obviously. Recycled rare earth stuff, recycled polyester, recycled gold. The paper packaging is 100% fiber-based. I understand these are not going to be the things that push you to buy something, but it could push you to not buy something, I would argue. If you are environmentally conscious and you find out that the brand absolutely does not give a fuck at all about the environment and produces all their stuff in the most wasteful way, I think this is something that could push you towards some other brand or waiting a little longer with an upgrade cycle, something like that. So overall, I think this is a solid generational uplift. I do not mind that the design is the same. We'll get through some of the downsides once we actually compare it here. So AirPods, compare. So AirPods Max, so you can see Apple stopped differentiation here with the Lightning and USB-C version. So just keep that in mind. Then we're going to compare it to AirPods Pro 3, or even better, we're going to compare it here to AirPods Pro 3. And then here we're going to keep AirPods Max 2. The colors on AirPods Max 2, by the way, are Midnight and Starlight. So black and goldish silver, blue, purple, and orange, the same colors as were available for the USB-C AirPods Max. So 549, moving from H1 to H2 chip, pro level active noise cancellation on the original, 1.5 times more here versus AirPods Max 1. AirPods Pro 3 promise you 4 times more versus the original AirPods Pro and twice as much over AirPods Pro 2. You now get adaptive audio, which again kind of dynamically can switch between transparency mode and noise cancellation, conversation awareness that will base that on if somebody starts talking to you. They all actually support personalized spatial audio with dynamic head tracking, so that's good. You do get USB-C ultra low latency audio. Obviously, that's something that simply by the nature of these being earbuds does not work on AirPods Pro 3. You do get the extra health features here, like heart rate sensors and hearing tests. That's actually something interesting that they did not implement hearing tests. I could see that maybe coming later as they really get more familiar with the combination of H2 with AirPods Max hardware, but that is something that I believe should have come to AirPods Max 2. Yeah, Jamie, you're saying you're surprised there are no new colors. Well, my expectation is that Apple really wants to like logistically optimize as much as possible. I assume there might be some visual refresh, but I think that Apple believes that whoever bought USB-C AirPods Max, they are probably not like gunning to upgrade to AirPods Max 2 with H2, right? So anybody who's coming from regular AirPods or AirPods Pro or might have never had smart earbuds or something like that, or maybe they come from a really old pair of over-ear headphones, to them, I would argue the collection of colors here is enough. And when you look, for example, at the collection of colors that AirPods Pro offer, right, the fact that we even have 5 colors is a small miracle, given Apple's usual treatment of the vibrancy of their audio stuff. I think hearing test isn't on Max because they need to be in ear for it to work properly due to audio leakage. Yeah, I'm not gonna say, by the way, that, oh, this is Apple just forcing you to buy AirPods Max 2 and AirPods Pro 3. Obviously, there are gonna be some explanations for it. Apple is actually pretty obsessed in adding a good amount of audio of health features to their devices. So I don't see them not doing that unless there's a good reason for it. So yeah, Astute, you're saying they're not waterproof. Yes. So this is still the same design. If there are going to be actual major changes to the audio quality itself based on brand new drivers and stuff like that, to battery life, all of that will come with like a somewhat of a redesign. Whether that redesign is actually a super major redesign or just a small adjustment, but this is basically AirPods Max USB-C with the H2 chip inside and getting as much out of that as possible. They use the digital crown interface instead of touch controls, which is probably the best hardware like audio control on any pair of over-ear headphones. So that's definitely something that Apple very smartly copied from their own Apple Watch and brought it to AirPods. We have 20 hours of listening with active noise cancellation enabled. Apple gives now less numbers, so this is the one number that they provide. I would assume that means that given that this is much more intensive ANC than before, that maybe that means that if you're not using ANC, it's probably a little bit higher. but then transparency mode is also better, so it might actually also consume well, the same amount of energy while being better, right? So yeah, expect about the same battery life, which I guess could be a disappointment. Again, these are not headphones. They do have an off switch, so you will have to accept that your number might be lower in the real world based on your AirPods lying around a little bit, being in standby time, and of course for standby usage, you do get the smart case. You do not get a new design for a case. You do not get a fully closed case. You do not have a redesign that makes these AirPods foldable or anything like that. So if that's something you're looking forward to, that's where you're much more looking at like the high-end Sonys. No dust, sweat, and water resistant. Support for the voice assistant, automatic switching between devices, personal engraving. Oh, fun. I actually didn't know that AirPods Max offered that. So what are the audio tech features that is being... We already talked about better ANC, adaptive audio, conversation awareness, voice isolation, personal volume. So we went through all of these that are differentiated here. Custom high dynamic range amplifier. That's interesting because... like Apple did improve audio quality from AirPods Pro 2 to 3. Did AirPods Pro 2 already have a custom high dynamic range amplifier? Yes. And AirPods Pro 1? Oh, does Apple not offer them here for comparison? Interesting. AirPods, I mean, I doubt. Okay, AirPods 2 just don't have anything. That's funny. AirPods 4 have more, but still not everything. And AirPods Pro with ANC, they do get all these features that basically require you to have some form of ANC to actually like for something like adaptive audio to even make sense to begin with. AirPods Max. Personalized spatial audio with head tracking is the same. They do not have a pressure equalizer. That makes sense because they're not in your ear, they're over your ear. Lossless audio and ultra low latency audio via USB-C. So at least if you're, by the way, using your original AirPods Max primarily as like wired headphones, you're getting like all these features will not really matter at that point. So keep that in mind, right? At that point, you should be very happy still with the original AirPods Max. No heart rate sensor. Yeah, they do. They don't have gyroscopes for something like nodding and shaking your head. They just use a basic accelerometer, so that's why they do require a newer chip to actually utilize it in a smarter way. A gyroscope that actually has many more axes of recognition, that can work even with a dumber chip, but here it helps that the accelerometer is paired with a much more powerful processor. 9 microphones total, the same amount as before. 8 microphones for active noise cancellation. 3 microphones for voice pickup, 2 shared with active noise cancellation, and 1 additional microphone. They did say better audio recording, so we'll have to see. No ultra wideband chip, unfortunately, here, so locating your AirPods Max won't get the super high precision of the latest Hue chips. That's unfortunate. And then again, yeah, the physical controls are so much better on AirPods Max than on AirPods Pro. But yeah, you don't have hearing test, no hearing aid features, no conversation boost, no hearing protection. Now, these features, like these ones probably don't matter as much given that these are over-ear headphones, but it's still interesting that they are entirely missing. And live translation, of course, H2 chip based. This is why they're also available on AirPods Pro 2. Size and weight, this is something that I've seen many people complain about. They weigh the exact same amount, 4.74 ounces or 134.5 grams. So if the original AirPods Max were too heavy for you, And given that the design overall is the same, right? Height, width, depth, it's all the same at this point. Don't really expect that to be much better or even better at all with AirPods Max 2. No ultra wide is a little bit cringe. Yeah, it's basically just a chip replacement, so they probably didn't even redesign the motherboard that much because in order to put the U2 chip somewhere. So yeah, that's a bit of a disappointment. Again, this does aim at a slightly different audience. You're probably much more likely to lose AirPods Pros given how small they are, given that you're moving them in and out of your ears. While a big pair of over-ear headphones, that's definitely something that is much less likely to be lost. But yeah, still, like, given the fact just how much cheaper Apple hardware tends to get the U1, U2 chip at this point, it's sad that this one doesn't have it. And yeah, you can see that Apple does not provide some exact stats. Like, for example, they do not tell you how much charge time gives you an hour or 2 hours or 1.5 hours of listening time. So I'm not sure if these numbers could be in some way degraded. But that's interesting, right? That they do not simply provide that number. It's literally just missing data because it's something that they bring up for AirPods Pro 3. It's something that they brought up for the original AirPods Max, but they do not bring it up anymore for AirPods Max 2. I know some of you asked like about does the case actually turn them off? Storage in the smart case preserves battery charge in ultra low power state. So contrary to what you have with like a low power mode on iPhone and it's on Macs, this is ultra low power and pretty unique in that regard, but it does not turn them off. It does have Bluetooth 5.3, so it is an upgrade over the original AirPods Max. It is the same as an AirPods Pro 3, but if you had hoped to move to Bluetooth 6, don't forget even the MacBook Neo, right, that just launched has a Bluetooth 6. Obviously, every device that has the N1 chip has Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6. This is still Bluetooth 5.3. However, again, this is also different from AirPods Pro, which is if you're probably using this in a way that you want to have the absolute highest audio quality, you're probably going to use the USB-C cable. At that point, you're also going to have ultra low latency. And that's what Apple is trying to push. Again, I do expect eventual H3 models, whether it's AirPods Pro 4 or AirPods Ultra, AirPods Max 3, if hopefully this form factor does not die at some point, the sudden death, because sometimes Apple does that. Not as much as the likes of Google and Microsoft. They tend to kill a lot of product lines. Like, do I need to remind you of like Surface Neo and Surface Duo and the entire like killed by Google graveyard? There's an entire website for that, right? Killed by Google. And they think that even just recently there's stuff to be added, right? Oh, Jesus Christ. Chromecast. Google Jamboard. Oh yeah, and Google Fiber is like Zune obviously from Microsoft. There's so much, like they tried Surface over-ear headphones. There is that Surface desktop that they kind of still have on their website, but they don't upgrade it or anything. There's just and obviously Google has like Google Duo. They have their own Duo, but it's a different. It was their video calling app. Meanwhile, Microsoft Surface Duo, which is also dead, that was their dual screen smart two iPad minis paired into one. And then Surface Neo, that was like their dual screen laptop, which didn't launch at all. So I somewhat suspect that Apple's Neo will be much more successful in the long term than whatever Microsoft did with their Duos and Neos. Sorry, just making sure that the stream works well. Yep, nice. Oops. Where were we? I think that's about it, though, for actual comparisons, right? Silicon ear tips, obviously, that's something that AirPods Max doesn't need. Do they still have those super expensive cushion repairs, like for $60? Yeah, they do mention the latest version. For them, they do mean here 26.4, right? Live translation with AirPods works in AirPods Max 2 with the latest firmware when paired with an Apple Intelligence-enabled iPhone running iOS 26.4 and later, available in beta. They will generally work probably with older versions of iOS, just like as like connecting them as like an audio device. But yeah, you definitely want iOS 26.4. Yeah, but I think that's about it. I mean, we can go to the actual website for AirPods Max 2 and see what Apple tries to advertise here. So all the same colors. The noise cancellation improvements. They do mention improved high fidelity sound. So we'll have to see what reviewers have to say. Maybe some audio files like Snazzy Labs, like Quinn from Snazzy Labs. All the intelligence features, still over-ear design. They call it unequaled fit and comfort, which again, this is somewhat questionable. The materials here are phenomenal, but they are just super heavy. Take a closer look. Yeah, these are all just like more in-depth writing of everything we've already reacted to. Yeah, Astius, I did see that. I will be, by the way, this is not only an AirPods Max stream. As always, I do use the latest and greatest story to start us off, but I will talk about some smaller stuff regarding Apple 549. They probably just ship right with like the USB-C cable and that pair of that case. That I want to say that bra. Yeah. Okay. So that's the case. Is the case just uniformly black or is it color matched? What's in the box? Smart case, USB-C charge cable, and documentation. Okay. It doesn't look like it's color matched. That would be a little bit weird. But yeah, that's about it for AirPods Max 2. I'm not buying them. I'm just very firmly an AirPods Pro user at this point. You can order them on March 25th and you'll receive them early next month in April. So just keep that in mind. Unlike the announcements of the new MacBooks and whatever, they did not, which became available for pre-order right away. This actually is launched. This is makes you wait a little bit for it. Jamie saying, I hope they improve the mesh on the headband. It's pretty good, but loses its strength after not that much use. Oh, interesting. I've never actually heard that it gets worse, because obviously whenever I like try out AirPods Max at like the store and with a friend of mine, like I never really considered that. Yeah, but I mean, it does make sense. It's just it's a very perforated, obviously, like surface. Over time, like the holes between them, they will stretch out a little bit, especially if your head tends to be on the bigger side. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. But yeah, let's hope Apple still improved them somewhat. And hopefully at some point they will also offer us a redesign that actually fixes some long-standing concerns, like that stupid case. But now, full hour into the stream, we talked 1 hour about AirPods. I did not expect that to be the case today. We do actually have more Apple topics to discuss, and they're actually quite interesting. So obviously we reacted a while ago to Apple Creator Studio, right? That combines Final Cut, Logic, Motion, the new Pixelmator Pro app, and more content even for iWork and things like that. Seemingly, Apple is now much more aggressive about their Pro apps. So obviously, they've offered a lot of updates alongside the Creator Studio release for apps like Logic and Final Cut. And now, and they bought Pixelmator, and then they made Pixelmator Pro not just a new version, but also finally ported it to the iPad, gave it a liquid glass redesign. So Apple definitely is showing a much higher commitment to professional apps than they did in prior years. And one clear example of that right now seems to be that in addition to acquiring the Pixelmator guys, they are now acquiring MotionVFX, a maker of popular Final Cut Pro plugins and more. I think they are from Poland, right? This team, I remember reading about them a while ago. Plasma Void 67, greetings, Max. Been enjoying listening to your streams. Apologies for the specific question, but have you found any very solid comparisons between the M1 Max versus M5 Pro, both 16-inch? No. There should probably be more and more such content if once like the likes of Vadim from like Max Tech, they run out of stuff. But I do post, like if you join my Discord, the link for that is in the description. I do post some results actually from my own. Granted, it's a 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro, but the M1 Max really didn't struggle too much on the 14-inch. That's started more with like the M3 generation, that there was like a noticeable difference between 14 and 16-inch, at least sustained. And so I do post some of my M1 Max results on my Discord, and then you might just manually use that to compare with some M5 Pro data that's out. Yeah, but obviously I do not recommend like looking at older reviews and taking like benchmarks from way back then, because ever since then we've had new benchmarks, we have a new metal APIs. I agree, Plasma Void, my M1 Max is too good as well. In fact, I'm not even sure that I will be upgrading to like the tandem OLED M6 generation, right? Because I mean, why, right? It's not like I'm watching like movies on my MacBook that I really will benefit from the much greater HDR experience. At that point, I'll just probably put some money back and invest into a new TV. Yeah, but thanks for asking. Stu saying, I wonder if they're going to make plugins free. Okay, so let's get to the story and then I'll give you my 2 cents. Jamie, you're speculating Apple might acquire Procreate in the future. I could see that happen. It would be a very interesting, like, full portfolio at that point, right? They would really be targeting Adobe then. Not just Photoshop alternative, not just Premiere alternative, right? But adding adding even more stuff and making even more stuff available at like the relatively low price that they're asking versus Adobe, right? If they make plugins by default available, if they make if they buy Procreate and make that just part of the Creator Studio, yeah, there's good, and especially if they also make sure that all these apps work between iPhone, iPad, and Mac. So, like for example, Pixelmator Pro was a Mac exclusive. They ported it to iPad. I really hope they also port it to the iPhone, so I don't have to work whenever I make my little thumbnails. I don't have to work with the Procreate Classic app. Sorry, the Pixelmator Classic app that has now been kind of like basically ignored, right? That's why it's called Classic. Yeah, so your speculations make perfect sense. Let's listen what is exactly happening. Apple has acquired MotionVFX, the company behind popular templates and plugins for Final Cut Pro. MotionVFX announced the acquisition on its website. Let's see. MotionVFX joins Apple. We're extremely excited to share that MotionVFX is joining the Apple team to continue to empower creators and editors to do their best work. For over 15 years, we've been on a mission to create world-class, visually inspiring content and effect for video editors. From the very beginning, we've been all about quality, ease of use, and great design. These are also the values that we admire most in Apple's products, and we are thrilled to be able to embrace them together. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our amazing customers and supporters who have been with us through all these years. You inspired us, you challenged us, and you helped our products become what they are today. We're incredibly grateful to be part of this amazing community and excited to continue our work to serve you. This is the beginning of something truly wonderful. So they are alluding that there will be more that's coming out of this, but this seems to be fresh. So similar to when Apple acquired Pixelmator, it took us a while to get results, like a redesigned Pixelmator Pro, the port of Pixelmator Pro to iPad. This could now take several weeks and months before Apple even puts MotionVFX templates right into Final Cut, right as part of Creator Studio. Plasma Void, must be a great feeling to be the owners of that company. Just think they potentially made plugins out of pure passion and interest. Then they got a ton of money from Apple and got to work with them. Now, yeah, and also like there's a risk for them right now, right? Let's say Apple does not acquire them, but Apple in the meantime starts to look at saying, you know what, we need more content for Creator Studio, right? So let's look at plugin makers. Oh, MotionVFX does not want to sell? Well, there are some alternatives out there, maybe not quite as popular, not quite as polished. We obviously have our own talent, we have our own relationships with Hollywood and things like that that we can leverage. And suddenly, if Apple now integrates their own plugins as part of Creator Studio, they're now potentially a better deal and or better quality than what MotionVFX offers. Now they are screwed, and they will really worry about not having said yes to Apple acquiring you. So there's obviously a very positive side of the story, but also some pressure here that was happening. Not some illegal pressure or immoral, just the nature of business, right? Either you can compete or you get acquired. That's just the nature of like capitalism. Here's the full message. That's just what we read. As part of the acquisition first spotted by Mac Rumors, MotionVFX 70 employees are joining Apple. So that's wonderful. So Apple is not like, this is something that I always hate when like Microsoft acquires somebody or Google. They're really like, sometimes when the company is really small, they'll just acquire everyone. Sure. But to a large degree, there is a lot of stuff where it's like, oh, we need half of you, right? Or some will just be like basically not forced but kind of pushed to exiting the company over time, saying, you know what, there's a little bit too much managerial overhead, right? You really need to prove your worth, and it's gonna become a very stressful environment. Seems like Apple has managed that quite well with their AI company acquisitions, their Pixelmator acquisition, even their Beats acquisition back in the day. So because Apple acquires less, and definitely for way less money, they feel much less pressure to like milk every little drop of money that they can out of these purchases. MotionVFX is a company that creates professional-grade visual effect templates, plugins, and motion graphics tools for Apple's Final Cut Pro, Motion, and DaVinci Resolve, which is not Apple, of course. The company's portfolio includes transitions, titles, effects, and cinematic templates for video editors. The company was founded around 2019 by Szymon Maziak and is headquartered in Warsaw, Poland. Yep, so I was correct. They are a Polish company. Apple has not commented on the acquisition, which they rarely do. Sometimes, though, like Johnny Cerrucci came out and did comment on them buying like the latest Israeli AI company for like silent audio, silent like sound, not silent sound, silent word recognition, silent speech recognition. So they do sometimes comment on stuff that's like more in the hundreds of millions to even billions. This is probably somewhere in the tens of millions. Apple might not have even been forced to pay that much. Apple might have just bought the intellectual property and just said, you know what, we're committing to paying 70 employees for at least another 2 years, the full salary plus some bonus assignment, maybe some other payment package if they choose to stay longer for us. And that might have been enough to convince them. Yeah, obviously Apple did launch Creator Studio, and they do have Final Cut in it. They still offer also Final Cut as like a separate purchase. My speculation is that if Apple is gonna bundle in these kinds of MotionVFX templates into Final Cut for free, or at no additional charge. That will happen only with the Creator Studio subscription and not with the standalone Final Cut Pro app. Obviously, Motion also has a Apple Creator Studio version. So step by step, Apple will use these acquisitions and feature differentiations to push people from those one-time purchases for like $200, $300 for Logic and Final Cut to instead subscribe to Creator Studio for $13 a month. Plasma Void, yeah, lots of potential upside and downside, many variables. Yeah, and in this case, I mostly see upsides for everyone, including us as consumers. Like, I did buy Creator Studio and I do enjoy it, right? I did not buy Pixelmator Pro as a separate app, Logic, Final Cut as separate apps over time. So Apple did basically convince me to give them money, which they weren't able to do before, and I'm getting something that I can invest back basically into my creative work here. I can even like let like my stepfather work with Logic because he loves like audio creation. He doesn't have a Mac himself, but when I come along with my Mac, he can play around with that. It's all fun, right? Excuse, they might kill DaVinci Resolve plugins. Yeah, I could see that. I don't think there will be any like anti-competitive issues with that. Like MotionVFX, they're popular, but they're not industry defining. So taking that away from like DaVinci Resolve, I honestly don't think it's going to be bad. Or what Apple might do, they're just going to keep the current plugins that are available for DaVinci Resolve, and they just never improve upon them, right? And over time, DaVinci Resolve users will find better, cheaper alternatives and move away from it. And then in a year or two, Apple can shut it down entirely and tell those people, the few people who haven't moved on, to finally move on, right? But obviously more exact changes, like to like, I assume that they won't change like suddenly Creator Studio pricing. I mean, they just introduced it, but the more stuff they add like this, I could see like I could see like Creator Studio becoming eventually like $14.99 a month, right? In maybe a year or two after it gains some value and gains some recognition, gains some features that firmly differentiated from the one-time purchase versions of those apps. So yeah, I definitely see upscale potential here. I wish they make MotionVFX free, but I don't think they will. I don't think they will make it free. I mean, it depends on your definition of free. If it's part of Creator Studio, which you already pay for, right? Is that free, or is that just part of a subscription and included, right? I tend to think the latter. Like, I hate it when people say, oh, a game is on Game Pass for free. No, it's for the price of you paying for Game Pass. And the same for like PlayStation Plus, which I subscribe to, right? If somebody tells me, oh, Monster Hunter Rise is free this month on PS Plus, and I'm like, not free. I mean, it's part of a subscription that I pay for, right? But yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. My speculation is they're going to make these plugins part of Creator Studio, and for the original Final Cut Pro, like the standalone, like $300 purchase, they'll probably keep around the old ones, similar to how they did for DaVinci Resolve, but then eventually they will resolve that, right? And then just let it lapse over time. I mean, for free for users who bought the one-time FCP, I don't think that. I think that Apple is very firmly just not gonna work on those apps at some point. They will technologically upgrade them for compatibility, whether it's obviously iOS, macOS 26 and stuff like that. But I think the future is in Creator Studio. And to be quite honest, while I do appreciate that Apple does let people keep buying those standalone apps, I do think that, like, you can see, by the way, how much more excitement Apple has for Pro apps now that they have a subscription model, right? I promise you that this subscription model by the likes of Eddie Q or Tim has been in the works for probably a year or more. And that's why they acquired Pixelmator, went on to work on making Pixelmator Pro, a liquid glass redesign, giving it an iPad port, right? Giving it some exclusive features versus the Mac version. Further, like creating even the new icons, which I know many people don't like, but it is a differentiation that Apple is creating in the lineup. And now they're buying this. I'm not sure if they would have bought MotionVFX if they were sticking to only full-time purchases. I think it's that prospect of reoccurring revenue, subscription revenue, that makes Apple be much more willing to invest again in Pro apps. Don't forget, at a time when Apple used to have a professional photo editing app, Aperture, right? But they did not, like, they felt like they couldn't really compete with Photoshop. They felt like it wasn't bringing enough revenue, so they axed it. But now they have a subscription model again, and they bought the Pixelmator guys, which, by the way, does not just have Pixelmator as like the Pixelmator and Pixelmator Pro stuff, but they also have Photomator in that, which is like a more direct competitor even to Photoshop, or at least like Lightroom. And I do hope that they do something with that as well over time. So while I do understand where you're coming from, Astuse, just from a pro consumer perspective, I do share your wish. But I do not think that's going to happen, and I do not want to give anyone like a false sense of hope about any of this. Photomator might be dead. Yeah, I mean, Photomator is such a difficult subject because it never felt like Photomator was as much a thing for the Pixelmator guys as Pixelmator, the actual app. So technically, from what I understand, most of the editing stuff for photos is in Pixelmator Pro that is in Photomator. I'm not really, like, to me at least, it's more than enough what I get in Pixelmator. But they did keep Photomator around. So maybe, I mean, look, it still has like a dedicated website for all of this, and it's obviously beautifully made and everything. It's not liquid glass redesigned or something like that, but it is a modern, powerful application. iPad, Mac versions. So, but yeah, like select subject. That's, for example, something that's in Pixelmator too, as well. So we'll have to see what ultimately happens. My speculation is they will probably just try to integrate as many of those features as possible into Pixelmator. But obviously, by the way, for Apple themselves, it obviously makes much more sense to redesign Photomator, create maybe like an iPhone version out of it, right? Because at that point, they can sell like, oh, Creator Studio gets an all new app, even though a lot of these app functionalities were previously available through another app. So this will probably be a little bit of a roll of the dice decision, right? They might even just ask the engineers and ask them, guys, do you even have the internal resources to keep working on Pixelmator and Photomator? What's your suggestion? Should we spin off Photomator into a separate app now in Creator Studio? Should we integrate all its features into Pixelmator Pro? And that might even be a decision that's up to them because they have the most experience with these apps. Let's see if there are any bigger news that I might have missed. AirPods Max 2 reveal iOS 26.4 release date. There's a new feature for the digital crown. Camera remote. Yeah, we mentioned all that. Obviously, these articles are designed with their titles to make you click on them. I'm not angry. But there are some things that I did want to mention. So this is not me going into in-depth benchmarks today for like Cyberpunk or whatever. But I did want to mention that in I probably should join the Reddit at this point so I can see those news right when they come out. But on r/Mac Gaming, we see more M5 Max benchmarks. This is for the fully enabled M5 Max. We see that with frame generation, this is frame generation still based on FSR 3.1. You can get pretty good results even at native resolution. I do not recommend playing this game at native resolution. I would probably play it at like 1728 by 1080 and then use Metal FX to up. Obviously, that would equate kind of to Metal FX performance. But the other point is that Cyberpunk just today has actually been confirmed to be getting a PS5 Pro version using the latest PSSR. That's Sony's upscaling technology. That's kind of based on FSR, but also in-house designed, and we've now gotten a promise from CD Projekt Red that Cyberpunk will get this stuff on PS5 Pro. But unfortunately, we do not yet have a Metal 4 version of Cyberpunk, even though that has been promised for a while now. At that point, frame generation would obviously have a Metal FX-based frame generation rather than forcing you to use a fork of FSR. And for stuff like ray tracing, which you can see also has some very demanding settings like RT Psycho and path tracing even, these would get either an image quality increase or a performance increase through the use of AI-based denoising specifically optimized for ray traced environments. So ray traced environments, because they cannot just bounce an infinite amount of light back and forth, because that would just put your frame numbers, even your FPS numbers, even lower. They do require a lot more advanced denoising than non-RT solutions, and that's something that Metal 4 also brings. And unfortunately, Cyberpunk does not get that on the Mac yet, but we've discussed that in a prior stream. Crimson Desert is a game that's coming out in 3 days. It's going to be a full Metal 4 game. It's going to have Metal FX upscaling. It's going to have Metal FX frame generation or frame interpolation, and it's going to have AI-based denoisers. Jamie, Mac gaming is in such a strange place right now. It feels like the high-end Macs are now capable of competing with PC, but it's just not supported. Yeah, that's perfectly put. I don't have anything to add to that. Jamie, thank you. You joined our Discord. I think you will feel really, really good there, because we have a lot of people there who have similar ideas about Mac gaming and similar disappointments as you do. So I fully understand that. Yeah. Guys, we're about 1.5 hours into the stream. Again, at the risk of being slightly annoying, I do want to give a shout out to all the YouTube jazz here. Subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. If you want to support me directly, you're just enjoying the stream so much, make your next chat in the live chat a super chat or a super sticker. Just a small donation goes a long way to support me, to allow me to do more streams, longer streams, right? All that stuff. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube or support you over on Patreon. And just to keep connected with me, join the Discord or join my Twitter. You'll find the link to both of that in the description of this channel. Jamie saying, I'm such an iPad dude, so I'm 100% left in the dot. But bro, I'm 100% an iPad dude. Like, I use my Mac for streaming and some work stuff, sure. But like, the iPad is my absolute favorite piece of Apple hardware, right? I prefer it over my iPhone, over the Apple Watch, my Mac. I just think that this Steve Jobs vision of like this magical piece of glass that kind of transforms into anything you might want is the perfect vision of technology. That's why I'm also excited for foldables, if they can get rid of like the crease and shit like that, or if I don't have to baby them at the risk that, oh, I'm touching them too much with my nail and now it's scratched up, right? That's not something I have to worry about on my iPad. Or I cannot even install a separate screen protector like I do with my iPad. So yeah, like I absolutely share your love for the iPad. I think it's one of the best things Apple has done. And I'm really grateful because don't forget the history of the iPad. Apple was working on an iPad-like thing, basically a tablet, before the iPhone, but they realized that it was like the kind of technology that they had probably needed like more scaling room for a bigger screen at that point. So like a faster processor because they weren't going to use like an Intel chip. So they went with an iPhone. They went with a chip from a Samsung set-top box. And the rest is history, ultimately making their own Apple Silicon, ultimately then resurrecting the idea of the iPad as like a very large screen iPhone, giving it more and more pro capabilities over time. Yeah. Saying your iPad Pro is your Mac at this point. Jamie, what iPad are you using? Because I used Mac and iPad at the same time, I've gone a little bit cheaper, or I do not upgrade my iPad as much as I used to, but I use the M1 iPad Pro and the M1 Max MacBook Pro. But if I were iPad only, I would have at this point the M4 or M5 iPad Pro with tandem OLED, just because I would need to stretch the money between an iPad and a Mac, because this Mac is ridiculously expensive. It's M1 Max, it's 14 inches, it's 32 gigs of RAM, it's 1 terabyte of storage, which at that point cost you a pretty penny back then. Finally, there is one piece of news before I get to a little bit of the drama that I mentioned in the title of this video. Jamie, you have the M4 iPad Pro with both the Magic Keyboard and the Smart Folio and Pencil Pro. So you have the full Apple experience. Congratulations. Love having fellow iPad lovers in the community, because so many people just tend to like, oh, the iPad does not do that, what the Mac does. And I'm like, yes, I understand that, but the iPad does other things really well because it is more simplified, because it is built for more efficiency. And I feel like a lot of people just refuse to understand it. Doesn't mean that I don't want the iPad to become more powerful in both hardware and software, but I don't want the iPad to just have Mac OS, because I think that would compromise it. Very grateful. Jamie, you're saying your iPad is your baby. That's cute. In a rare collab between NVIDIA and Apple, we're actually getting an exclusive feature from NVIDIA for Apple Vision Pro. So that's funny. So recently, NVIDIA announced at the Games Developer Conference, the GDC, that they will be upgrading GeForce Now for virtual reality. And they can now stream flat games at 90 FPS to headsets such as Apple Vision Pro and Meta Quest, so that's not an exclusive features. However, foveated streaming, which will work with your Vision Pro's eye detection and basically like understand what part of the screen you're looking at and prioritize the image quality of that region. That comes to Vision Pro, and 4K 120 is also a feature now exclusive to Apple Vision Pro using their latest Cloud XR basically APIs and stuff like that. NVIDIA Cloud XR 6.0 for Vision OS Apple Vision Pro. So Apple worked here directly with NVIDIA, which is a rare sight. If you know, obviously, the history that Apple did not like dealing with NVIDIA about stuff like drivers and things like that. NVIDIA wanted much more control back in the day when they were building GPUs for Apple hardware, or at least you could install like an NVIDIA GPU into like a Mac Pro. But seemingly for smaller software collabs like this, we can get some exclusive features for Apple Vision Pro from NVIDIA. Foveated PC streaming up to 4K and 120 FPS, immersive stereoscopic rendering, so this is obviously not just flat games. Really cool. If I don't own Apple Vision Pro, I definitely don't stream GeForce Now games to a virtual reality headset, but if that's a combination that appeals to some of you, let me know and share your experiences as well. But that's about it for the actual news topics of the day, because I do have one reaction video I would like to make, which is M5 Pro versus M5 Max here. And it's also basically a discussion a little bit between like 14 and 16-inch devices. So I do want to react to the there's one actual like news report on this though. Notebook check. So give me the English website. So M5 Max with throttling issues. Apple MacBook Pro 14 review, right? So you can check the entire review, but I think somewhere in here they also just have a small article on this. Wait. Apple MacBook Pro 14. Wait, where did they put it? Did I? Because I opened it on my iPhone, but didn't save it to my reading list. Would they put it in like news? So Sony, PSR, China Commission. No, all of that is a little bit older. Benchmarks. Okay, they do just not update that. Nice. Reviews. I guess that will just lead me back to MacBook Pro 14-inch. Which, I mean, we did already look at a review by Notebookcheck here. But I guess we can see some of the power consumption number. Testing offers 3. Okay, this is just the different modes. 14-inch M5 Max. So there's a little bit of a difference. I assume this is the 16-inch version. Wait, they did. I thought they did have a separate article for this. Am I going insane? Cinebench. Oh, they still use Cinebench 2024. That's bad. Okay, so you can see a little bit here. So okay, so that's something that they did have a separate article for. I don't know whether they unified it with their review, but what we see here is that the gap from the 16-inch M4 Max to the M5 Max with the 14-inch is actually pretty small. It's just 8% and still Nomad. And then you can see if you get what I assume are going to be the 16-inch here, this is average, so this will include even the highest scores, which most definitely now come from the 16-inch version. You will see like a 6% higher results, even more if you go to the absolute top. Still Nomad Lite should probably not be limited in any meaningful way. That's a much lighter weight test, as is Wildlife Extreme. Man, they do not even have Metal 5 stuff. Like, so there is no difference here. M5 Max here. 5070, 5080 laptop. Oh, you can actually see Cyberpunk performs pretty well here. Though Cyberpunk is one of these games, you probably want to actually use it with an AI upscaler. So you would use DLSS 4.5 on these RTX laptops. You would use Apple Metal FX here. That would create some different visual results and some different performance results. So that's definitely something I would like to see. Yeah, you can see that the jump from the 16-inch M4 Max is not too high here. Man, why? Like, how do you label a review as like, oh, like the 14-inch is like compromise or whatever? What do they call it? M5 Max with inconsistent performance and throttling issues, right? And they make it super difficult to actually find it in the story, right? The power consumption is a big issue for the M5 Max model because the 96 PSU is simply insufficient. In high power mode, which is required to get the best and most stable performance, the battery drained by around 10% when we played the native version of Cyberpunk 2077 and even 15% during our stress test. Two things are especially problematic. First, Apple limits the input power to 97 watts, so it makes no difference whether you use the 96 or 140 watts available PSU. Or something more powerful. Apple tries to hide the fact that the battery has to be drained under load as long as possible because the battery indicator still shows 100% and the MagSafe LED stays green, while our measurement device clearly showed that the battery has to be recharged. In short, peak load scenarios, which are more common, this gives the users the impression everything is fine and the 96 watt PSU is sufficient. Okay, so that's already one thing where the 14-inch is supposedly bad here, right? Its integrated power supply and its peak power acceptance rate is too low for the maximum power consumption of the screen and the chip in high power mode combined. You can see in power consumption, Cyberpunk used on an external monitor like 86 watts, and then you just have to imagine you add the screen and everything to it, the speakers on the MacBook itself, that's suddenly going to give you over 97 watts. That's going to cause your battery to drain even while you're charging with the included 96 watts. The 72 watt-hour battery still provides excellent battery run times, especially at a lower panel brightness of 150 nits. We recorded more than 15 hours in our Wi-Fi test and even slightly more than 20 hours in our video test. These results are far superior to any Windows rival with powerful components. If you increase the panel brightness, however, the runtime will drop significantly. Yeah. And our Wi-Fi test only ran for 6 hours at max. SDR brightness 640 nits without the ambient light sensor, which I do not understand why they insist on that. Okay. If you really push the system, you can drain the battery in under 1 hour, and you can actually reach a 3% battery from 100% in just 49 minutes. The charging time is around 1.5 hours with 50% after 28 minutes. So if we look at that with some competition, here we have the H.264 video playback. If we compare that to like some gaming laptops, some other 14 inches, you'll see it greatly outperforms them. Is there like an M4 Max 15-inch? 14-inch? No, only the 16-inch. But they have the M4 Pro here next. And thankfully, this does not seem to have actually a notable battery life reduction versus the M4 Pro, which usually, even on Apple's own website, they do tell you that the Max chip variants will last a little bit less than the Pro variants. News, Apple MacBook Pro, handle it. If you're interested in the new M5 Max SoC, we recommend you get the larger MacBook Pro 16. The compact 14-inch model suffers from inconsistent performance. This is not only the case for the stress test, but also pure CPU or GPU performance. Apple once again offers its most powerful chip, the new M5 Max, with 18 CPU cores and 40 GPU cores. During our stress test, the M5 Max consumes up to 96 watts for 1 to 2 seconds. After that, the chip immediately drops to 46 watts, but even this value cannot be maintained and eventually levels off at 42 watts. The larger MacBook Pro 16 has an advantage here. It can consume 70 watts during the stress test, so 66% more. This is also very easy to see in the following chart. Oh, this is how much power it drains. For stress test CPU power, and this is stress test GPU power on the different devices. So the 14-inch with the M5 Max for stress test CPU power, 21 watts. The 16-inch, a lot more at 37 watts. 24 watts for the MacBook Pro 14-inch with M5 Max on the GPU stress test, and 32 watts, so still a full 8 watts higher on the 16-inch version. If you only stress the CPU or the GPU, this behavior continues. The CPU cores can consume up to 75 watts for a brief moment, but they drop to around 50 watts. GPU load, on the other hand, results in up to 72 watts, which quickly levels off at 55 watts, and finally at 44 watts, which we're already talking about the high power mode. Under sustained workloads, the GPU performance is not stable either, but it drops by around 10%. The MacBook Pro 16-inch has once again performed better and showed the true potential of the M5 Max GPU with 40 cores. So we can see through major weakness. Okay, so I guess that's kind of the result that we saw, that I saw before. Obviously, we've seen like some 6% difference in like peak Steel Nomad performance, and there will be some difference obviously in peak Cinebench results, as you can guess from the power consumption. I wouldn't again use here Cinebench R23, 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme as actually good benchmarks by themselves. Like they're not that relevant for modern games, and Cinebench R23 is not relevant for like modern cinema 4D work, but it is something that you should consider, right? Like just the power consumption alone. Obviously, a task like Steel Nomad or Solar Bay Extreme, they might actually consume even more power, or they might throttle a little bit quicker. So just keep that in mind. There definitely is a discrepancy between the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros here. Let's see what Vadim from MaxTech has to say about the M5 Pro versus the M5 Max MacBook Pro, because while I do agree with some of the criticisms from Notebookcheck, I do not quite agree with this video. I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit, and let's get started.
Versus M5 Max. Is it really worth spending the extra money? You guys can see the full specs right here, and we also have two different sizes.
Again, so double the memory, double the storage, full performance here this is the full M5 Max. This is actually the binned M5 Pro. So this is 14 inches versus 16 inches. So there are a lot of cost additions here that don't quite make sense. Like, why would you compare the 14-inch version versus the 16-inch version? My only suggestion is that the 14-inch version will have a harder time maxing out an M5 Max. So maybe that will push you more into getting an M5 Pro. But at that time, the value proposition for some work scenarios are just really going to depend on your specific usage, right? So keep that in mind. Like, you might need like a 16-inch screen, like because you have a ton of windows open and stuff like that, and you want the 100-watt battery. You might need even more RAM than like the 64 gigabytes at which the M5 Pro Max is out. So at that point, only the M5 Max is an option for you. So yeah, they made it like exactly like half the price, but it's obviously not exactly what you are gonna be limited to, right? Even this version you can get for like $300 less and get the 32-core GPU version, which again, as we saw, even the 16-inch version does not fully sustain its max power consumption. So 32 cores, they will perform worse than 40, but will it actually be like 25% less? Or will it actually be 20% less? Maybe not. We'll have to see.
So in this video, we're going to compare the difference in sizes, the speakers, along with the thermals and real-world performance.
Yeah, so this is why I also wanted to watch the video for more like the discussion between 14 and 16 inches. Obviously, these do run different chips, but it's one of the very few first videos on this topic that do compare like speaker quality and everything. So just if you are still unsure, because we had some of people like that in like my previous stream between like 14 and 16 inches, this should hopefully give you more data to work with for your discussion.
I love the size of the 14-inch when I am on the go.
As do I.
It is thinner, it is lighter, but it has smaller fans inside, whereas on the 16-inch, I love that large, massive display because when you're doing things like photo and video editing, you just have a lot more room and it's more convenient. The 16-inch also has a much larger battery capacity, and I have both of these charged to 100%, so let's go ahead and unplug them so we could see the difference in battery drain. Now,
so battery drain here is obviously unfair. Like even the 16-inch version with its 50% not quite 50% larger battery, but like 40% larger battery. It will, of course, it has a larger screen, it has louder speakers, and it has a chip here with 3 more CPU cores and over double the GPU cores. So it will consume disproportionately more power here. Obviously, if you compare a 16-inch M5 Max versus a 14-inch M5 Max, now the battery considerations would be much more equal, and then we could compare them much more effectively.
Comparison, because the Max chip does suck more power, so that will be interesting to see. The 16-inch also has larger speaker enclosures and some bigger drivers, so let's compare the speakers.
So the 16-inch version is louder, but the thing that it actually exceeds at is like stereo separation. It's separating the individual instruments. It's much better bass. So the 16-inch does get louder, but that's actually not the focus of Apple's design process. I think they very much realized that like 85 watts, 85 decibels is quite enough. So they, instead of just focusing on making them louder, they actually notably improved the audio quality.
Let me know the difference you guys heard. To me, the biggest difference is that the 16-inch has a lot more bass. Honestly, an unbelievable amount of bass. So it's great for listening to music and especially watching movies. Now, testing the SSD speeds, this one has to come with 2 terabytes compared to 1. And surprisingly, as far as the read speed, the 1 terabyte ended up faster.
So this test, you should probably run it a few times in a row. Sometimes the SSD needs to warm up a little bit for that kind of stuff. I've seen some crazy differences whenever I like test the SSD in my iPhone. It can go from between 2.5 to 3.5 gigabytes per second. Usually, if you let the test run twice or 3 times, it will stabilize at those higher numbers. So these all reach speeds that are basically irrelevantly fast. The differences between them will basically be imperceptible in real-world workloads.
Now, with the right, the 2 terabyte was a little bit faster. You can get 2 terabytes in both of these, and both are insanely quick. Now, jumping into CPU performance, what blows my mind is that the CPUs are very similar, and for $200
that's now from the new chiplet architecture. So the CPU chiplet that's used on the M5 Pro and the M5 Max is the same. The main difference is the GPU chiplet, and for the CPU chiplet, the M5 Pro also offers you a bint version with 15 cores. That's 10 performance and 5 super cores, while the M5 Max by default always comes with the full 18 cores. That's 12 P cores and 6 super cores. And then, of course, there will be some differences in how the GPU chiplet is binned. So on the binned M5 Pro, that's 16 GPU cores or 20 on the Mac. On the fully enabled one, on the Max, it's either 32 or 40.
More, you can actually match the 12 performance cores and 6 super cores of this crazy expensive Max chip. So let's go ahead and run this. Now, of course, this one has 10 performance cores and 5 super cores. And looking at the spikes at the center here, you'll see that the CPU on the 16-inch...
So they're using the Power Gadget, MX Power Gadget app. Shout out to Jimmy James, one of our loyal long-term supporters, super deep in the material. He rightfully points out that sometimes in this test, the CPU and package power, like the CPU power, as you can see here, is actually higher than the package power. That obviously makes no sense because the package power is the CPU plus the GPU plus the neural engine, which you can see the A&E and the GPU are currently disabled. But one thing that the package power will include is the power consumption of the RAM. So the idea that the CPU and package power are identical is already weird, and it should be at least reversed. The idea that the package power is actually lower than the CPU power, now we are talking about a literal impossibility. Just from the nature of how this works, that should not be happening. Plasma Void 16-inch all the way, baby. Lovely machine. 14-inch is very cool, though. It feels very nice. I agree. The M5 Pro in general seems like a very good buy while jacking the RAM up to around 64 gigabytes. Correct. On the MacBook Pro, that is. When you look actually at the M4 Mac Mini, which is still available, that one still comes with a 64 gigabyte top-end configuration. For some reason, Apple did limit the M4 Pro MacBook Pro with 48 gigabytes. Now that's up to 64. And of course, the jump in CPU performance on the M5 Pro versus the M4 Pro is larger than on the M5 Max versus the M4 Max. So the M5 Max is up to 15% faster in multi-threaded performance versus the M4 Max. The M5 Pro is up to 30% faster than the M4 Pro, because the M4 Pro previously maxed out at 14 cores. The M5 Max the M4 Max previously maxed out at 16 cores. That's 12 P cores and 4 E cores. But now both M5 Pro and M5 Max max out at 18 cores. Obviously, if you get the bint M5 Pro, then you get 15 cores, which still should be nicely competitive with the previous fully enabled M4 Pro. The M5 Max feels more higher use case catered. Yeah, obviously, like if you need 128 gigs of memory for something, or you want to play some games, there are going to be some use cases, and I will criticize MaxTech here for some statements. One thing, for example, is that the Max chip has 2 times the media encoders, whether it's for H.264, HEVC, or the ProRes media engines, right? That's something that really matters for export times in apps like Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve and things like that. And these apps will also utilize the faster GPU for things like Motion for Final Cut or general VFX plugins, like what we just discussed with Apple's latest acquisition. So these are the higher end scenarios. You will still get by even with the 16 or 20 core M5 Pro, but it's not entirely just like, oh, like this is only Hollywood level production, right?
Has more cores, spikes a little bit higher, but it's not that big of a difference, meaning this thing will put out a lot of heat inside of it. We'll take a look at that. And looking at these scores, even the base 14-inch has pretty much 26,000.
So again, shout out to Jimmy James on Discord. You'll find that there's actually been the first post of a 30,000 plus result here. This is already the fastest like consumer CPU, absolutely the fastest in a laptop, but even on desktop you would have to move up to like super high core count Threadrippers, which at this point are more like prosumer CPUs than GPUs. They like even their motherboards cost like as much as like a thin and light laptop. But yeah, it's obviously the fastest single core performance. The M5 base model already had with up to 4300, up to even 4350 in Geekbench CPU, already had the fastest CPU core on the planet with the new super cores. Yeah, the M5 Max, and for that extension, the fully enabled M5 Pro, because there is an 18-core of the version of the M5 Pro around. These are the fastest CPUs you can get, especially in a laptop, but you will also really struggle to find anything faster on the desktop market.
29,000 on the unbinned CPU. It's about a 13% gain. Now this performance is crazy, even in this one, about double of my daily laptop. And honestly, I would spend that extra.
So I assume he uses the M1 Max, because the M1 Max comes in at around 12,000. So he just pointed at this, at the 14-inch, and said it's about double his. I know from my own M1 Max that that's roughly 12,000 to 13,000 points. That makes sense.
CPU daily labs, you just have the best CPU available, even though you're not paying anywhere near as much as I paid before.
Correct. If your workflow is much more CPU demanding than GPU demanding, then just get... Honestly, you can get the base M5 Pro, but you can get the fully enabled M5 Pro. You don't have to pay for 2 terabytes. You don't have to pay for 48 gigs of RAM or stuff like that, even though I still would probably recommend it just because it's going to make your experience really great on these devices. But yeah, if you're like a coder who does not do like on-device large language model integration with your coding, maybe you use an LLM, but you use it mostly from like the cloud, like the latest Claude versions or ChatGPT Codex 5.3, 5.4, right? These models are not available for on-device rendering. You'll have to run them through the cloud. If you do that, and then you don't need 128 gigs of RAM, then you don't need 40 GPU cores and all those neural accelerators. You don't need the crazy over 600 gigabytes per second bandwidth. Then just get the M5 Pro.
Few more CPU-based tests. This is Speedometer 3.1. Both are absolutely...
This is the same result as you will get even on the base version, maybe like 5 points higher. It's irrelevant. Like the browser is absolutely not the limitation here in terms of speed. Like the machine is not the limitation. When you're testing Safari or Chrome, you will obviously have some differences in HTML compatibility, Chromium stuff compatibility. So keep that in mind. Plus Chrome, while it is still a RAM hog, it is even a little bit faster than Safari recently, like by like 2-3% maybe.
Insane scores. You're not going to get any faster for web browsing than this machine.
No.
And this is Figma for web design, and this project is brought to us by 500 Designs, one of the best design and marketing agencies in the US. And honestly, guys, you are not going to see a performance difference when you're working with things like this. Both are insanely fast at loading everything. And now selecting these 12 high-resolution web pages and exporting these, the 16-inch Max took 1 minute 20 seconds compared to 1 minute 21 on this one, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, so this is going to be margin of error. You can like even time this a little bit wrong. You click on one a little bit faster than the other, and everything that runs in the browser can have slightly different latency to the cloud and everything. So this can explain like a second here or there. Again, this is a task so lightweight, it will even work perfectly fine on an M2 version on a MacBook Pro. It probably is not going to be impacted even by like the 8 gigs of RAM, much of the MacBook Neo. The storage is also fast enough, even if you look at the 7 gigabytes per second storage on the previous Pro and Max, or now the base MacBook Air and M5 MacBook Pro. But yeah, if you want to show off and you want to get this done even faster, yeah, but this is not the task you're looking at if you want to truly get your money worth out of this. Love how you put just in air quotes there. Which part did I put in air quotes? I almost think I put several. Let me know. I don't know. My brain just refuses to have like short-term memory whenever I'm doing my streams. I don't remember the shit I'm saying.
The CPU performance that you
I'm
get
just shooting.
And now let's jump into Xcode and see how it does. CPU performance isn't much different, but we do have a RAM difference. Now this is running, and one thing I want to point out is that the fans kicked up on the 14-inch, but not the 16-inch. And I'll do a full thermal deep dive a little bit later in this video. And here's the results. We have 99.9 seconds compared to 83.7. That's about 20% faster on this Max chip that has the full CPU cores. And honestly, I expect if you buy a 16-inch M5 Pro, which comes with the same unbinned CPU cores, your results will be the same. And now, for the first time, you can get 64 gigs of RAM in a Pro chip without having to buy a Max. And here we are in Logic Pro, and I found something very interesting.
You were saying if you don't need the Max, then just get the Pro. Yeah, true. And I 100% stand by these air quotes. It's a machine that starts at $2,200. That's still way cheaper than my M1 Max was, which obviously if you add inflation up on this, it's a really expensive one. And that's why I'm not so eager to upgrade it, even if the money was there. But yeah, it's just the M5 Pro. Like, I guess I would be, if I said, get just the MacBook Air, I wouldn't probably put it in air quotes, but that's a machine exactly half the starting price of the M5 Pro MacBook Pro, right? $1,100 versus $2,200. But yeah, both chips are fantastic. It's nice to get clarity on what exactly the M5 Max itself said. Exactly. And I feel like that's why I really wanted to start with the Notebookcheck results, because like I feel like they could go into more detail. So I'll get to more of that drama over time. But I just don't feel it's actually that bad. If you ask me like what it comes down to, I think it comes down to that if you want to get the Max chip on the 14-inch version, get it because you need the extra memory, and get it preferably with like the 32-core GPU version, because that's more than enough extra performance, and it's going to consume a bit less power than the 40 GPU core version, which you won't be able to max out in the 14-inch anyway. And hopefully, if you really are looking forward to a Max chip in like a 14-inch form factor, there are some rumors that the next design is not just thinner with the tandem OLED screen, but also going to have much improved cooling by the use of vapor chambers, for example. So maybe at that point, like, look, if you are really happy with the performance of the M5 Max and 16-inch is the right choice for you, buy it. If you're really looking forward to a 14-inch device, maybe wait longer, right? I mean, I would even recommend waiting even for the 16-inch, but I do understand that for some workloads, you just can't wait. Maybe you have a machine with 32 gigs of RAM and your workload's doubled, so you need at least 64, and maybe just to make it future-proof, you'll just get 128 or something like that, right? This is all possible, but I don't think that that would apply as much to people buying the 14-inch version. I think that would mostly apply to buyers of the 16-inch version. Guys, I posted the link to the Discord directly in the live chat. If you're watching and enjoying this and you want to stay connected outside of YouTube, please consider joining over there. We've had some really nice growth ever since the recent wave of Apple announcements. Would be really cool if we could keep that up, just for your consideration.
In the settings, with the full unbinned CPU, you can select up to 18 cores, 12 being high performance, but on the base 14-inch, it only allows you to select 14 instead of
maybe it doesn't support a non-round number, but yeah, that's weird. Just use automatic and stuff like that, especially if it's an Apple app like Logic. It should be fine.
15. So you have one core that is just left out. So we are going to just leave that in automatic as recommended. And look at the results here. This blew my mind. The 14-inch can handle 220 tracks.
290 is already insane. So to anybody who's like a lover of like not classical music, but even music from like the 60s and 70s, this is music that often ran on like 8 tracks, right? I think most Beatles titles were like 8 tracks. So 290 tracks, 365 tracks, nice 20% scaling, whatever. This is overkill. This is for like, just for context, what you might need that for is this would be professional orchestral stuff where you have like all your where you don't even just record the overall orchestra, but you might even record the individual instruments and combine that. That's the kind of workload you would need to even remotely justify 290 tracks. I don't even know what you would do for 365. And then some of this stuff will also just scale with more memory. So more cores is good, more threads, more CPU power, like more powerful cores is good. But also, obviously, if you want to work with larger data sets, that's where more memory comes into play. In this case, also even faster storage for potential overflow memory, memory swap. That's also going to help. This is how you get these crazy results.
Max, that is a massive difference. Enough talk about the CPUs. Let's jump into graphics. I have Geekbench 6 opened up right here, and what's interesting is the 14-inch base model has 16 GPU cores compared to 40 on this full M5 Max.
So this is again why the pricing stuff is not very fair, because you can get a 32-core version, of course, here. You can also get it with less memory. Instead of 48, you can get it with 36.
So let's go ahead and run our metal test. And here are the scores. We have 124,000 compared to 225,000.
So, by the way, because I posted the link to the Discord, shout out to Jeff Poole. He is actually a member of our Discord, the original main developer of Geekbench, and still is, right? I don't want to say original as if he is not longer that. Geekbench CPU is an amazing benchmark. Geekbench GPU is a great benchmark that I feel like needs a little bit more understanding across the board. It's very compute based. It's not as much gaming related, even though you can use its scaling on the same platform to make some statements. But overall, it's much more compute dependent or compute related. So keep that in mind. It's also for the regular metal test. It's not going to use like the neural accelerators, or it's not going to benefit in the same way that a game will benefit from improved ray tracing or improved mesh shaders or a new architecture of dynamic caching. So this is why you might not see the same kind of scaling in Geekbench GPU test as you might even see on like Steel Nomad or Solar Bay, and of course real world games. Plasma Void, very wide comparison. It's cool to see, though, referring to the two models in this video. Yeah, it's good. This is why I do like reacting to MaxTech. I might have some issues with some methodology and some statements, even in this video, I don't think are justified based on the data. But I do appreciate that they take these devices, they test their speaker quality. If they test devices with different screens, they'll test which one gets brighter and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the amount of work that Max and Vadim and their team puts into all of this. I like their blind camera comparison stuff, all that.
Of about 80%, so you are paying double the price here for 80% more performance. Of course, you have some more storage, RAM, so it's not just that performance.
And the other, I guess it's not really complaint, but it's something to keep in mind with Geekbench GPU test. It's not really a test that like Blender, like a demanding Blender file that you'll just run for minutes and even potentially close to an hour. You'll see thermal throttling between devices differences. You'll see differences in sustained clock speeds. Geekbench Metal, because it runs through one test after the other, it will give the GPU a little bit to breathe. It will not allow it to fully max out. So that's why you might not see perfect scaling either in the way that you might even see in a game.
It's the larger size, but the question is going to be in these graphics tests, do you really need that much graphics performance? And now let's use the graphics to run an AI benchmark here. And of course, both of these have the new accelerators that make them way faster.
And that's something we've already reacted to, so let's see. Weird. So this is one thing that you should keep in mind. AI scaling in Geekbench AI has not yet been optimized for the neural accelerators. This has to do with how Core ML implementation works on stuff like that, versus potentially using even MLX-based solutions. But this is Core ML. Just I'm not saying this is MLX-based. Just making sure you understand. But for example, like when you look at the way that like Kimi K2.5, Qwen 3, all of these models that you will run through LM Studio, they're optimized for Apple Silicon through MLX, which is an Apple designed technology that was then open source and is now being improved by the community and Apple's team. Core ML is how you basically do it through Apple fully. Obviously, there's the difference between training and inferencing. I'm not going to get into all that. But the way Core ML is currently designed, without an update, it seems like neural accelerator utilization is simply not that great. So this should, in theory, because this is testing not the neural engine, this is testing the GPU, this should just scale with the amount of GPU cores, because each GPU core has a neural accelerator, and it should scale with the amount of bandwidth, which this chip has exactly double the bandwidth as this one. So at the very least, it should be like over 60,000. So, and you will see that real world AI tests are closer to that. So we'll have to see when Geekbench AI gets updated to take full advantage of the neural accelerators. And for the Geekbench GPU test, that one is not designed to take advantage of those. So keep that in mind.
We have 31,635 compared to 40,800. That is only 29% faster, but we go from 16 graphics cores up to 40. So maybe at some point it's just too many. I was not expecting this. I was expecting more than double. Now let's use those GPU cores and draw things to create an image from text. I'm using Stable Diffusion, 25 steps, and the same prompt as before. That was super quick on both of them, and the difference isn't that big. 32 seconds compared to 25 seconds.
Yeah, this also should be better. I don't know if this is in some way like more neural engine based, but yeah, this stuff should be faster. So we are still in the beginning of the bigger M5 chips. Maybe like developers didn't feel the need to really optimize that hard for the neural accelerators on the base M5 and the A19 Pro chip. But this is something that I will expect to see getting a lot better. Also, the framework that I mentioned before that integrates all of these AI features, CoreML, is about to get a huge upgrade at WWDC and be upgraded also in branding from CoreML to Core AI. So Apple will make it better. Hopefully it's not just a branding exercise, but actually also make sure that these kinds of neural accelerators are better utilized by these apps.
40 core, so about a difference of 28% there, but once again, less than I expected. Let's make it harder. I have a new prompt right here, high resolution, more steps, and I wanna see if we'll actually get a bigger difference if we have to push it a lot more so. And right here, I have
you can see it just does not fully utilize them. It uses like percentage-wise like half here of what it does here, which given that this is less than half, it basically comes out to almost the same.
3 opened up. The M5 Pro spiked a lot higher, more often, more graphics usage compared to the 40 core right here. And even with this tough one, the difference was not as big as I expected. So maybe it's just still too easy, or I don't know what. You guys let me know.
Yeah, anything that's under 1 minute usually are easier tests. But then again, if you don't need something that will take much longer than a minute on the M5 Pro, are you really gonna buy the M Max to get something that runs the same thing at 40 seconds? What kind of quality of life difference is it to you to save those 20 seconds?
Test 3D Mark's Steel Nomad Lite in unlimited mode, so resolution won't play a factor, and I have MX Power Gadget opened up. We'll see how much more power those extra graphics cores take. So I saw 33 watts, the highest on the M5
So
Pro.
we saw these questions of like sustained numbers on the Notebookcheck review, obviously. Right, when you look at 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme, you'll see on the 16-inch version it got to 30 watts. On the 14-inch version it got to 21 watts sustained, obviously starting from much higher. This is a different test, Steel Nomad versus 3D Mark Wildlife. Steel Nomad is much newer, much more optimized to reflect more modern games. But so the exact power consumption numbers will vary, but I assume that the gap should be still similar. Even though here, of course, we are comparing Max to M Pro. 40, but this is different. This is the 20 core version. Okay, so they do not have the it's only just that they do not actually compare the exact same versions, because they compare an M5 Pro 16-inch version versus a 14-inch M5 Max. Now I'm really wondering, what is Notebookcheck really doing? Like, why are you comparing things that are not one-to-one at that point? Now I'm a little bit confused, because in my head, I just assumed that this test would not make sense. Like, if these were not just equivalently spec'd models. Now I'm really unhappy with it. Jesus.
We have, 80 watts, 81 watts. 86, oh my goodness. So
so package power is slightly higher than CPU.
We're definitely using that whole GPU.
What is happening here? Why do we not have numbers here? So package power here actually makes some sense It's still actually lower than the CPU and the GPU combined, because in combination, this should be 95 watts. Again, plus memory, this should be more like 100 watts.
Here, and the difference is massive, 136.5 frames per second compared to 63.7. That is over double the performance. So that shows if your program, like
Mark sniffing out the details, he's getting to the bottom of this. I've really been unhappy with the Notebookcheck reporting on all this, but I really respect them. So I guess I give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when it's not deserved in some moments. But yeah, you can see this is over double the performance on Steel Nomad. So clearly games do scale better than just raw compute. Just keep that in mind. So we'll have to see further tests to actually make a better statement.
in gaming, you're gonna use your whole graphics. If you can use it, you are gonna get
Omar
more than
Farouk saying upgraded to an IPS display for just, okay.
double the performance. It just depends on if you can utilize it. Now I expect all the GPU cores to be used in Blender for 3D rendering. So this is the party tug test. Let's go ahead and hit render here. Now this is using the ray tracing cores that are built into here, and we can see 37 watts, almost 40 right there, compared to running at 15-ish. And even though the M5 Max uses way more power, it gets...
What's happening with these numbers? How are you running Blender with the... What is this broken? Is this indicator broken? Because like, yeah, this shows 40 watts versus 15 watts, which does make sense. This is the 14-inch version. This is 16 cores. This is the 16-inch version. This is 40 cores. So this scaling actually makes, to me, more sense than the scaling that we saw from Notebookcheck. So thank you for that, Max, at least.
This is
or
done
Vadim.
a lot quicker. And that is 15 seconds compared to 35 seconds. So yes, more than twice as fast when all the cores are properly being utilized. And that makes me wonder how the battery life is going to compare with those differences, and we'll find out in just a bit. And now we have Lightroom Classic photo editing. This is gonna be tougher with 500 raw images that are edited. Let's go ahead and export all of these. And here's where things get interesting. We are using almost 32 gigs of RAM on this 48 gig machine, and on this one we're using 18.3.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a difference between used and actually like utilized. Used also assumes that some of it is just instantly ready to get some cached files right into itself. Don't take that too seriously. Basically, just look at swap used and whether there is some memory pressure in your system, which would mean like you would see red basically in the screen chart. Stuff like this, that will be fine with 24 gigs of memory.
Out of 24. Neither are using swap, but that has to make up some difference. Now, the other thing I see is our CPU cores are being pinned on all of them, if you guys look there, but the graphics difference here in Lightroom, well, the 16 core in the M5 Pro, it's being really utilized. Look at that graph. Compared to the M5 Max, I mean, it's taking little breaks. It's doing a little bit of work, taking a break. Now it's using a little bit more, taking a break. So we're not fully utilizing the crazy graphics here. And even the cores, we have the extra cores now, after a while, it's switching between which performance cores it's using here. So maybe this M5 Pro is the best bang for the buck. Let's see. Guys, my mind is blown. We have 4 minutes, 45 seconds compared to 5 minutes and 5 seconds. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I don't know about you, but I'm saving my money.
Yeah, if you are a photo editor, to be honest, even like an M3 Pro is already good enough.
Going for this machine. Because Apple decided
like maybe you will be working with like 16K files or something like that, but anything in like regular resolution that you're just going to make ready for like posters and regular printing, you'll be fine.
In the M5 Pro, even the binned model, this is insane, even with that RAM difference. And now let's get into video editing. And I have to be honest, for regular video editors, even those working with ProRes and even raw footage, both of these machines are kind of overkill now. They do such an incredible job compared to just a few years ago. I'm gonna export this 5-minute project, and it has effects and film grain and stuff, but it's just so easy for it. Now, the one thing is the M5s do have newer encoders, so let's watch this export speed. And with the Max chip, you have double the encoders. So let's see the performance difference. And the results are 51 seconds compared to
exactly twice as fast. So this is one thing that I actually, when I saw this made me really consider reacting to this video, because I do feel like if you are really, oh, Carlo Ferguson, welcome to the chat. I feel like it's weird to say, oh, you're not really getting your money worth. Like, and again, this is a smaller 5K minute, so you are exporting it faster than real time, right? But let's say you're working with like a 1 hour file, right? you will now feel that 2x difference. So just keep that in mind. And if time is literally money for you at that point, it's not as difficult of a consideration. And now that double the price, that will actually look very different, because if you're working with really large projects, well, you probably are not getting a 1 terabyte configuration. You're probably not getting a 24 gigs of RAM configuration. So irrespective even of the double the encoders and everything, the prices would be much closer, because you would get something, even the M5 Pro, you would get it with more storage and more RAM, and that would put it in terms of price much closer to this 16-inch M5 Max. Plus, if you're a video editor, you like a large canvas, you're probably paying the extra $200 for the 16-inch anyway. So yeah, just keep all of that in mind. Color Ferguson, Apple's 50th anniversary event. Yeah, sorry, no, Color.
In 42 seconds. So yeah, way faster exports, but even with this M5 Pro, you don't have enough time to go get a coffee before your render is done. And now let's open up this 8K project with a bunch of raw footage in it with effects, and I'm gonna render the timeline. This used to be very, very difficult, and you'd want a Max chip for it. And here,
Jesus, how slow is he speaking? Why is 1.5 so slow? Let's do 1.6.
see it is blazing through this. That is actually
That's
pretty
over twice as fast. That's interesting. So I guess here the GPU is also coming into play.
impressive if you need to render everything in your timeline insanely fast. And we
Yeah,
have
I'm feeling
39
better.
seconds.
I was feeling bad before the last stream, and then the last stream actually helped me feel better. But yeah, like I've been relaxing on the weekend. My mom came to visit, had a nice phone call, all that stuff.
Compared to 54 seconds in this 5-minute timeline that is 8K. So yeah, the M5 Max, if you can utilize the graphics and all the encoders,
Yeah, my voice is also
you will
better.
get that extra performance. But the question is, are
Sorry, Omar Farouk. No spamming to everyone, but especially no spamming about some bullshit. I'm gonna replace the AMOLED screens in your smartphones for with IPS. So if you guys are wondering why some messages disappear in the chat, because occasionally I'll mute people, I'll block people and stuff like that. And Color Ferguson, be careful too. Like, you do post some bullshit here, right? So I can deal with some funny stuff, but don't overdo it, okay?
you pushing your projects to the extreme to need this extra power? In the past, you had to spend a lot of money. Nowadays, I believe a lot of people don't anymore. And now I have Cinebench, the latest version, open up right here. We're gonna test the maximum CPU performance along with throttling between these two sizes. So let's go ahead and run this test. And I have MX Power Gadget open up right here. So the unbinned chip does use more power. You guys can see 75, 77 watts, the difference between them. Now, you can spend the $200, get it in this machine, or get the base 16-inch. And I actually heard the fans sooner on the 16-inch because of the extra power. That extra cooling allows for higher clocks.
Yeah, this is now specifically the difference between having an M Max and M Pro chip, right? Like, even the better cooling on the 16-inch, that will just be offset by having over double the GPU cores and things like that.
3.7 on the performance compared to 2.8. And let's take a look at our thermal cam. You guys can see those hot spots from the fans. And
yeah, this is also something that I wonder if Apple can just make larger exhausts. Partially the reason why the fans can actually develop a little bit of an annoying sound is because their output is just really concentrated on these areas. I wonder if they can make first larger inputs, yes, but also larger exhausts that hopefully do not actually heat up your screen in any way that damages it, which on OLED would be much more problematic. Caller Ferguson saying bye. Thank you anyway for joining.
42 degrees was the highest on the M5 Pro. Let's look at the Max here. A little bit cooler at the chip itself, 39.
I mean, yeah, but you should. I mean, the actual chip. Obviously, thermals matter more. Well, one thing that you will also see, by the way, something that they did not focus too much is actually the chip temperature. So they had those power consumption numbers. Where are they? Right? But one thing that they didn't really mention too much is the temperature of the cores. So it seems like, because Vadim and Max, they do like to focus on it if the number is really high. And we did saw over 100 degrees, which is still fine, but we did not see 105 or 7 degrees or something like that. Let's see if that's something that they might still reach.
for a long time. Looks like we have 7,001.
So let's
this
see.
is the one CPU test where if you
So 95 degrees, 88 degrees, 97 is the highest
spend
here.
$200 on the 14-inch, you might not get the full performance as having it in a 16-inch just because it's a full CPU load for a long time. Looks like we have 7,105 on
Thank you, Carl Ferguson, for liking my videos.
the 14-inch binned M5 Pro, and on the M5 Max, we have 9,262 points. That is a difference of about 30%, which is impressive.
Yeah, so here you're, I think beyond just the different core count, you do see, and this is probably the result that I find the most interesting here, and the one that kind of lines up the most with the story from Notebookcheck, which is that the sustained numbers, which is what's going to matter in the 10-minute stress test on Cinebench, are higher on the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
Given we're going from
So
15
this is also something that I think they should add to the chart. The chart. This is 14 inches. This is 16 inches.
cores and better cooling capacity as well. But for most real-world use cases, you're not maxing it out like this. And in general, for 3D, you want to use more graphics. And now what about battery life? We have a much smaller battery on the 14-inch, and we finished off with 21% battery life. We've had about 3 hours of heavy-duty testing cut down in this video, 21%. How about the 16-inch with a much bigger battery, but we also have more power being used? We are at 7%.
Yeah, that makes sense. Over double the GPU performance in several gaming tests, close to double in Geekbench. You are helped by like the 40% larger battery, but you have the larger screen, you have the larger speakers for even like that small speaker test that they ran. This absolutely makes sense. Again, they are in high power mode. For most people, even for those using pro apps, I still recommend using automatic. I feel like that's just more the way that Apple has designed Apple Silicon. We're gonna have to see if that changes with the M6 generation, if Apple might do something to make high power mode even better and more worthwhile. But yeah, expect low battery life, but therefore higher performance with high power mode. So for most people, you will get slightly lower results, but way better battery life with automatic. The difference is not that much. Usually for those 5 to 10% more higher performance numbers, you do sacrifice like 20-25% of battery life. That's just because of how scaling works. Usually the power consumption to performance graph just really plateaus at the end, and you get really diminishing returns. So automatic is probably the right way to go for most Apple Silicon users.
Battery, wow. I expected not as big of a difference, but this thing likes to suck a lot of power. And what happened in this video is something
It
that I don't think
switched
has
from
happened
suck
ever
to
before with my
blow.
testing. Is the M5 Max worth it? Well, looking back at all of the different tests, a lot of them, the difference was not very big at all. Some that were even surprising. Now, in a few cases, when you can max out the GPU consistently, we did see a big improvement.
That's not a GPU max out, that's an exact encoder doubling.
If that's something that you do and you have the extra money to throw at your machine, get that. But unlike ever before, the difference for most people between these machines, it's negligible in the real world.
Yep.
And that means that if you bought a Max chip in the past, my daily is still an M2 Max that I can take with me, doesn't have to stay in the studio. I can now.
Oh, okay, so, okay, because the M1 Max, he claimed that the 14-inch delivered double the performance of the M2 Max here. Maybe my Geekbench score is a little bit lower than I remember it being.
Save a lot of money this time around, get an M5 Pro, and it will still beat out my machine in almost everything that I would do. So you could choose your size if you want the bigger screen or not, but you can buy an M5 Pro and have an incredible machine. Or you can get a 14-inch with binned, spending a couple $100 if you want the unbinned. I don't know, guys. This is impressive, I guess. The positive side of it, how powerful the M5 Pro now is, and with all the different accelerators.
Yeah, and Apple did not, for example, do some stuff that I expected them to do. I thought that they wouldn't give the full PCIe 5 storage speed to like the base configurations of the M Pro and Max chips, or at least the M Pro chips. I kind of expected them to do like some in-between, where maybe even not give it 1 terabyte of the new base version, but give like an in-between step, like 768 gigabytes and 10 gigabytes per second rather than the full like 12 to 14. So I'm really happy with some of the decisions. Again, for most people, I probably recommend waiting for the M6 tandem OLED versions, especially on the 14-inch. I think if you are willing to go 14-inch, you probably should also be looking at like slightly cheaper M4 Pro versions, because you will get most of the experience. If you want the best of the best right now, get the M6, get the M5, whether it's the fully enabled M5 Pro, because the 16-inch by default comes with the 18-core CPU, or get the GPU version. For most stuff, I probably think that most people don't need higher than the 32-core version, but that also comes with some memory limitations. So if, for example, you are testing the latest on-device AI models, you really want 128 gigabytes on your device, that's where you obviously get M6 Max, highest end configuration, probably even more than 2 terabytes of storage, maybe like 4, but that's now up to you. And I think if that's your use case, you probably don't need me to tell you that. And if you're spending that amount of money, then probably my convincing wouldn't go either way to either convince you to buy it or not buy it. So usually my buying recommendations have much more to do with like the under $3,000 purchase decisions. iPhones, obviously, that kind of max out at $2,000 right now. iPads, which once you combine the highest end configuration and the Magic Keyboard, usually I do not recommend like the 2 terabyte iPads. And even I sometimes recommend not buying the Magic Keyboard, but like a cheaper third-party alternative from like Logitech. When we are talking about machines that are well over $4,000, some configurations over $7,000, then you're probably not listening to me, but still, I'm very grateful if you just tuned in and watched. Plasma Void 67, I find it so bizarre that the smaller M5 Max 32-core version is only allowed to get 36, can't increase it. Yes, that's because it also has, I think that's a good thing to end it on. That has to do with the exact configuration. So it's not just using smaller memory modules, but it actually populates fewer memory spots. That's why it doesn't just have less memory capacity than the fully enabled M5 Max, but also less memory bandwidth. 25% less to be exact. Where's the tech spec side? There it is. You will see here that the M5 Max with the 32-core version and 36 gigabytes of RAM, that one maxes out at 460. So the one version that Apple could have given it is like a 72 gigabyte configuration. But once you're paying for 72 gigabytes, I think Apple rightfully assumes that you are also able to pay for like the fully enabled chip. So yeah, but one reason why I think that this configuration is still should be interesting to a lot of people, because it still has the super fast storage. So even if at some scenario you're running out of the 36 gigabytes, you have incredible memory speeds for memory swap. You still have the doubling of the media encoder. So if you're a video editor, and again, you're fine with 36 gigs of RAM, you do get the full speed of the extra media encoders. That's for H.264, H.265, and ProRes. So yeah, that's why their test ran at like 51 seconds rather than 1 minute 42 as it did on the M5 Pro. Plasma Void saying, love to break down with you. Well, and I love doing the breakdown with you. Let me quickly check if there are any last minute news and rumors that I might have missed. Nothing on Mac rumors. Nothing really on 9 to 5 Mac. I do not actually want to go and read the Power On newsletter, because I think that's something that I can reserve for a future video, or probably I just this Sunday I might react to like the new Power On newsletter and the old one. It's basically a very basic statement on the fact that like iOS 27 is going to be like macOS or OS 10 Snow Leopard and stuff like that. And it comments about that Apple internally uses Claude, and the Gemini partnership is very new. So that's why some of it is taking some time. And he comments that liquid glass is most likely not going away because, contrary to some opinions by people like John Gruber, it wasn't just worked on by Alan Dye, but even by new people, by like Stephen LeMay, who's the new human interface design lead. So again, nothing truly groundbreaking. It's probably it probably would have been interesting enough if we didn't get new hardware, but thankfully we did get new hardware. And now that we're done with that, I can give you some big mark action at the very end. I see most of you have now left. It has been a longer stream than I expected, so thank you to anyone who stuck it out all the way until the end, or even just for most of it. Even half of it is already very welcome. Great support from you guys. If you're watching this, enjoying this, and you want to support me, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who think might enjoy it as well. Comment live when you catch me live, but also comment afterwards in the regular comment section. That helps a lot with the algorithm, helps attract new people, helps us grow this channel. Just is very good, basically. If you want to support me directly, whenever you catch me live, you can leave a super chat or super sticker, just as a small donation right here in the live chat. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube. I already earlier gave the shout out to the MacBook Pro members. The second shout out now for the MacBook Pro Max members, to Steve, Angelica, Max, Maximus, and Jonathan. And join our Discord, join my Twitter for all of those future discussions. I hope you can interact with the community even outside of the streams. So that means, and yes, also hit the notification bell. That way you know when I'm going live next. And you can also, of course, let me know what other topics you would like to see me react to and stuff like that. But that's about it for today. My eyes are getting tired again. So I'm not, unless Apple drops new hardware tomorrow, I'm not streaming tomorrow or probably on Wednesday. I might be back by around Thursday. So as I promised in some previous streams, this is now the more demanding work phase for me for about a month from now to mid-May. Or mid-April, I'm sorry. So I will be streaming definitely less than during Apple's like 3-day event stuff. So just keep that in mind. This is why I do, again, recommend the Discord and the Twitter account, because there you can interact with me regardless of my streaming schedule, which can be quite erratic. Just a small warning. But that's now really it for today. Thank you again for anyone who is still sticking around. I'll see you guys then some other time, hopefully soon. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.